My 12-year-old daughter left me for her rich stepfather. After losing her mother and being kicked out by her stepfather, she returns broke at 22. My ex-wife, then 41, female, and I, then 45, male, split up 12 years ago. She found solace in the company of a wealthy man. Sorry, there's no better way to put it. She was a stay-at-home wife and mother who had little interest in working or earning money. She wanted to stay at home and take care of the house and our daughter. I never forced my daughter to work after she was born, even though my finances were tight. I was working 2 jobs and earning enough money to eat well. However, my salary could not afford the luxury lifestyle she desired. I will not go into detail regarding my relationship with my ex. This piece is about Laura. Details regarding my ex-wife may be covered in another post. When Laura was 10, my ex-wife admitted that she had been sleeping with a wealthy man. She moved out on the same day that we filed for divorce. We became co-parents to Laura. Because I had 2 jobs and she didn't, we decided that I'd have Laura on weekends. I formed a strong bond with Laura. We have some fantastic adventure trips together. Even though the divorce was traumatic, spending time with her made me feel so much better. As time passed, I noticed Laura was delaying our meetings. Previously, every Friday, I looked forward to her email explaining what she planned to do over the weekend. However, the email's substance eventually changed to, "Sorry, I can't make it this weekend. We're going skiing," or, "We have other fancy sports or SL trips with stepfather." I initially ignored this, believing her stepfather was simply trying to keep her happy and that I should not be jealous. I eventually concluded Laura didn't want to see me as regularly. Our weekly meetings became bi-monthly, then monthly, only one day of the weekend. I saw she was not enjoying our time together as much as she used to. When it became clear that she was purposefully avoiding me, I challenged her. I tried to explain that I was doing everything I could to keep her happy, even overextending myself financially. Despite this, she continued to forsake our weekends together. She began lying, claiming she had schoolwork or projects on weekends when in fact, she was going out with her stepfather. Her excuses sounded real at times, but they were mostly made up. Whatever little time we had together, she would always complain about how much better it was going out with her stepfather since he doesn't look at the price tag before ordering anything. Even on trips I accompanied her on, she would prefer to spend time with her stepfather. She began grumbling about tiny inconveniences that previously did not disturb her. But she never stopped talking about the new PlayStation 5 or bike her stepfather gave her, or the expensive stuff her mother purchased. I felt she was too young to grasp that showering someone with material possessions is not love. The problem got worse when she ignored me for almost 3 months. Despite several calls and texts, I received no response. Desperate, I called my lawyer and told him everything. He informed me I could sue my ex-wife for alienating Laura. But Laura was 12 at the time, and my lawyer advised that if she admitted in court that she no longer wanted to spend time with me, it may exacerbate the situation. Laura could say she needed more money to live up to her lifestyle, which could imply increased child support. Yes, I was already paying child support, despite the fact that her wealthy stepfather provided so much for her. I dropped the idea of suing my ex for custody. There was no purpose. My attorney advised we have a formal out-of-court conversation with them. It would help me understand what they wanted. I agreed to go this way, and my lawyer wrote them a letter with extensive allegations. He said that we desired an out-of-court settlement. I had a strange sensation that my ex-wife would refuse to talk since she had enough money and time to burn in a court action. To my astonishment, she agreed to discuss and resolve this matter in front of the attorney. My ex-wife's husband attended the conference, as did my ex-wife and Laura. They both swore they were beyond this and had no idea if Laura was ghosting me. They admitted they had no part to play in it and stood aside, allowing Laura to speak for herself. Laura then delivered the most devastating blow of my life. She demanded that I relinquish my parental rights. That was 10 years ago, yet I still remember the frightening event vividly. I was dead silent for, I'm not sure how long. My lawyer pressed me for a response, but I just stared at everyone. What do I say? When I looked at my ex-wife, her lips twisted into a smile, as if she knew what was going to happen. I took Laura's hand and murmured, "Baby, I hope you understand what you're saying. Giving away my parental rights would mean you could no longer call me dad. You would no longer be my daughter." She shook off my hand, stared straight in my eyes and said, "Yeah, that's what I want." I was astounded. I ran out of words to explain the implications of her decision. My lawyer attempted to explain the legal repercussions, such as property concerns and other issues, but she refused to change her decision. She looked at her stepfather and questioned, "Once he disowns me, you'll be able to adopt me as your daughter, right?" He nodded with wide eyes and replied, "Certainly, darling." Words cannot express the bitterness I felt at that moment. My world was destroyed, to say the least. I lost my sense of purpose in life. After my wife of 15 years cheated on me, Lara was the one bright spot in my life. She was the one I looked forward to after working 2 jobs. I didn't date anyone for 2 years after my divorce. I didn't have the time and didn't want to. I wanted to give Lara my complete love and attention. This is what I received in return. She wanted to get rid of me. My state was so pitiful that I couldn't think clearly. My lawyer borrowed some time to respond to them. I'm sure my ex and her husband slept well that night after seeing me in such a vulnerable position. My lawyer drove me home. After he went, I cried like a baby for hours in my empty house. My heart was filled with a wide range of emotions. I contacted my folks and informed them of Lara's desire. They were completely terrified and hurried over to comfort me. My parents, particularly my mother, were really close to Lara. She had been caring for her for over a year when my wife needed surgery and was forced to stay in bed. During that time, my mother took care of both Lara and my ex-wife. Mom gave it a go, but Lara insisted that I give up my parental rights. She passionately wanted to be her stepfather's daughter. He had informed her that he couldn't adopt her unless I relinquished my parental rights. I asked my lawyer what my choices were. He suggested we could sue them for manipulating Lara, but because she was 12, it would be difficult to show she was being manipulated. Besides, they had the money to pursue a long court action, whereas I did not. Plus, what's the sense of battling when the person I'm fighting for has already decided on their side? It was a lost battle. I had no choice but to swallow the bitter pill and give up my fatherly rights. I spent the next week wrapped up in my bed. I left my second job. Who do I work for now? I lost all motivation to get up in the morning and go to work. I took so many absences from my full-time job and struggled so hard that I was eventually dismissed. I moved to a different town, slept at a subway station, and walked around like a crazy person for days. I gradually got out of it, found a new job, went to the gym, and enrolled in treatment. It took me around 2 years to recover. I didn't date, but I did go on a lot of solitary treks as a form of treatment. During one of these visits, I met my current wife, Brianna. She had a 5-year-old daughter named Emma. After a while of dating, we moved in together. Brianna introduced me to Emma for the first time, and I broke down. She reminded me of Lara. I strongly wanted Emma to address me as Dad, but I held back. I did not want to damage myself again. I had a healthy but distant relationship with Emma. On her 12th birthday, Emma requested me to adopt her. I felt so overwhelmed. I now have 2 kids, Emma and Amy, a 3-year-old toddler, with my second wife. I believe I've provided enough context on my circumstance. Fast forward to a week ago. I was returning from work when I noticed a familiar face smiling at me. As I approached, I saw it was none other than Lara. I felt shivers, as if I had seen a ghost. She was taller, slimmer, and much more attractive, but it was easy to recognize her. She ran up to me and hugged me, saying, "Dad, I'm your daughter Lara. I finally found you." I gazed at her with lifeless eyes and replied, "I have 2 daughters, but you're not one of them." Before she could say anything, I began walking away. She followed me, but I turned around and yelled, "Quit following me or I'll report you." I did not see her after that. The next day, she arrived at my residence. As soon as I opened the door, she exclaimed, "I apologize, I know you're angry with me, but please hear me out. Mom has died and Dad, stepfather, has brought his mistress home. He doesn't love me as much as he did when Mom was living. He's cut me off financially and says I need to start earning my own money. When I pestered him, he threatened to disown me." I listened to her outburst and said with a straight face, "So what?" She began pleading with me for another opportunity. I screamed at her to leave and slammed the door in her face. She then went to my mother and apologized. She was able to persuade my mother with her emotions, and now she wants me to reunite with Lara for the sake of our family. The anguish she caused me is preventing me from reconciling with her. Am I in a *** hole? Update 1. Some of you inquired about my ex-wife, wondering whether she was a gold digger, if she manipulated Lara, or if it was my fault. So here's a quick background on my ex-wife. We dated for 2 years before we married. She worked at a neighborhood bar as a waitress while we were dating. I was a regular there, which is how we first met. She was living with a coworker. I worked one full-time job and lived in a studio apartment. That's when I acquired another job, saved more money and purchased a house to accommodate her. We were married, and she quit her work. For the first 6 to 7 years of our marriage, she was pleased and content with my salary. But then she began moaning about how her friends' husbands earned more money. She would even tell me that instead of settling for me, she should have waited longer to find a richer husband. It was offensive, and we would have fights. Of course, I couldn't just stand there and take the obscenities she hurled at me. Eventually, our connection became chilly and distant. One day, she revealed that she had been sleeping with a wealthy man and would be going out to live with him. I didn't beg her to stay, but I did warn her that these wealthy men regard women like her as toys. They play with them and then discard them when they're finished. She said she didn't rush things this time, and she'd been seeing him for 2 years. She trusted him enough to live with him. After that, I didn't have anything to say. I kept quiet and sucked it up. Some of you pointed out that Lara was just 12 when she requested me to disavow her, and that I should have battled for her. You are correct that she was a juvenile when all of this occurred, and I do not deny that she was emotionally and financially misled. When she became 18, she had the option of contacting me, but she chose not to. She's now 22 and is just seeking out since her stepfather cut her off financially. Someone questioned how my ex-wife died. I didn't ask Lara about it, but she informed my mother that her mother died from a serious illness. Lara also had a liver condition and needed surgery as a baby. The problem is that Lara is exploiting my mother's emotions in order to assist her reconcile with me. Instead of discussing it over the phone, I went to see my mother and discovered that Lara had fed her sob stories to win her back. She stated she was homeless, had no employment or money, and had been living on the streets since her stepfather kicked her out. My mother requested I meet her and I accepted for her sake. Mom contacted Lara, and she arrived within an hour. I probed her aggressively and all of the facts came out. It turns out that her mother and stepfather spoiled her so much that she never finished high school. She was too busy vacationing and dining with them to think about schooling or school. I'm not sure what that man was thinking by indulging her in this way. I'm not sure what her mom was thinking when she allowed this to happen. Lara insisted that everything she did and said, including the parental rights issue and the ghosting, was part of her mother's plan to embarrass me. I asked her why her mother would do such a thing. She said it was because I didn't make enough to purchase her mom high-end clothing and accessories, which had embarrassed her in front of her friends. Lara claimed her mother devised the scheme to shame and humiliate me in front of her new husband. Listening to this was really distressing because it brought back all of the traumatic experiences I had worked so hard to forget. I told Lara that the past was done, her mother was gone, so what did she want from me now? She asked me to accept her as my daughter again. When I questioned what would happen after that, she quickly said, "It means I would be your daughter, and you would have my back." I answered, "Okay, I will accept you as my daughter, but all you will get from me is love. I'm planning to give Emma and Amy my property, insurance money and savings. But I shall cherish you as my eldest daughter. Will that work for you?" She froze. After stammering for a time, she responded, "Yeah, we can discuss money later." "You are not going to make a will now, are you?" I said, "Yes, Emma and Amy are already identified as beneficiaries in my insurance and savings accounts. I also bought a house in the new city and gave it to my second wife Brianna. I won't change any of that for you. If you're good with that, bring me the document I signed giving up my parental rights, and I'll have my lawyer prepare a new one to overturn it." She answered, "Yeah, sure," but remained mute for the rest of the conversation. My mother offered her food, but she rejected, citing a pressing matter. 2 weeks have gone and she has yet to turn up. I pointed this out to my mother, adding that it was all about money. Lara backed off after I informed her I wasn't going to give her any. What a useless piece of work she is. Update 2. I warned you it was all about money, and it certainly is. Lara returned to my mother's house 2 weeks ago, despite the fact that we had last spoken 4 months ago. She looked awful, with red puffy eyes covered in dark rings and rashes all over her body, possibly caused by swallowing something she was sensitive to. She was crying and screaming for assistance. She demanded money from my mother. Lara explained that she had been living with a friend since her stepfather disowned her, but that friend had now thrown her out as well. She claimed to have sold the majority of her items to buy food in recent months, but she now had no money or possessions. Mom questioned why she hadn't acquired a job. Lara claimed she dropped out of school and no one would hire her. Mom recommended communicating with a friend who manages a bakery to see if she could get Lara a job as a cleaner or something similar. After all, there are many careers that do not require a high school graduation. Lara remained mute and wailed, asking my mother for money. Mom gave her some packaged meals and $100. She also questioned why Lara had not brought the paperwork to challenge the disownment. Lara stated that it was at her stepfather's place and that she would retrieve it next time. She accepted the money and food, then left. Mom didn't tell me about this visit at first because she assumed I'd be upset with her. 3 days earlier, Lara returned to my mother's house with the same sob story. Mom asked what she did with the money, and Lara responded she spent it on groceries. When Mom inquired about the job, Lara did not provide a direct answer. This time, Mom refused to give her any more money, claiming she didn't have any to spare and no more food. She simply handed her a loaf of bread. As Lara was preparing to leave, Mom inquired whether she had changed her mind about being my daughter. Lara responded, "What is the sense of having him as my father if he isn't going to give me any money? He has given everything to his beggar stepchildren." Mom was taken aback by her statements and chased her out of the house, threatening her not to return. Mom quickly called to tell me about both trips. I did feel upset with her for assisting Lara the first time, and I warned Mom to be cautious while answering the door at night. Based on Mom's description of Lara's appearance, it appears that she is engaged with bad company and may pose a threat to Mom, especially since she is living alone following Dad's death last year. We want to seek a restraining order against Lara in case she returns and causes trouble again. Today I went to my mom's residence. I went outside to see whether Lara was around, but I couldn't find her. I will be staying here for a week. I don't know what to do, but I'm sad about her. If what she said about my ex-wife is correct, my ex went too far in her attempts to disgrace me, destroying her own daughter's life. If Lara is lying about it, she has already paid the price for her nasty behavior. By the way, someone remarked on my previous post that everyone has the freedom to make their own decisions, and Lara wasn't bad for choosing her stepfather over me. She was simply on the wrong side. I suppose that's true. She made a decision 10 years ago, and she has to live with the consequences for the rest of her life. I threatened to cut off my children's inheritance if they don't become independent by getting real jobs. Am I the asshole for being too harsh? Hi Reddit. I am a 55-year-old father and accomplished company owner. I've been running my own business for about 30 years, and I've done well for myself. My wife, 53F, and I have been married for 29 years and have 2 adult children, Caleb, 28M, and Maya, 26F. My parents left me a considerable legacy when they died, which helped me expand my firm to where it is today. So let's pretend we're financially comfortable. Now, this inheritance isn't just a sliver of change, it's a life-changing sum of money that, in the wrong hands, might easily be wasted. My wife and I have always recognized the benefits of hard work. We did not come from a wealthy family and had to start from scratch. We wanted to give our children possibilities they didn't have, but I'm starting to wonder whether we went too far. I guess that's why I'm here. I need guidance. My parents were not tremendously wealthy, but we did okay. When they died, they gave me a considerable legacy, primarily real estate, which was rather inexpensive at the time. However, I did not use that money until I had earned my own. I wanted to prove to myself, and perhaps to them, that I could make it on my own, even after they left. So I threw my heart and everything into starting my business from scratch, and it is now doing exceptionally well. My wife and I have always lived nicely, and we have ensured that Caleb and Maya had everything they needed as they grew up. They attended the greatest schools, had unlimited opportunities, and never had to struggle as I did. But this is when things became difficult. When I started generating real money, I wanted to offer my children the life I never had. They attended the best schools, dressed the best, and had everything they needed. We established trust funds for them when they were born, so at the age of 21, they had more money in their accounts than I did at the time. Caleb and Maya grew up in an entirely different environment than mine. They never had to work summer jobs or worry about paying for college, and now they're grown-ups relying on trust funds with no actual jobs or ambition. They live in their own little bubble, entirely separated from the outside world. I had always thought that as they grew older, they would desire to make something of themselves, but that has not happened. Caleb spends his days hanging around with friends and spending money on flashy gadgets, whilst Maya is into the influencer lifestyle, attempting to construct a brand around herself with no actual substance. They are both entitled, lazy, and frankly, bullies. They have never had to struggle, and it shows. I adore my children, but seeing them like this is frustrating. They don't seem to understand the worth of anything because they have never had to earn anything. My wife, bless her heart, is far more patient than I am. She keeps telling me they'll figure it out eventually, but I'm not convinced. That is why I ultimately decided to take issues into my own hands. It all came to a climax during a family meal a few weeks ago. My wife and I were discussing our retirement plans, nothing too serious, just brainstorming ideas for what we might want to do after we retire from the business. Caleb and Maya, understandably, were uninterested in the discussion until I indicated that we'd have to decide how to manage the inheritance. Suddenly, they were all ears. I suggested that they take over the company in the future, but they promptly dismissed the idea. Caleb chuckled and stated that he did not want to squander his life working, and Maya made a sarcastic remark about how she is too preoccupied with her career to worry about it. I could feel my blood boiling. I asked them what they intended to accomplish with their lives, and they just shrugged it off. Caleb claimed he didn't need to work because the trust fund was sufficient, while Maya stated that she was building her brand, whatever that means. That's when I understood how far gone they were, and that my biggest error might have been giving them too much too quickly. When I was their age, I was already working hard to earn a living. I was on building sites at dawn, learning the craft from the ground up. My children, on the other hand, appear satisfied to sit back and live off the family's fortune, with little desire to pursue their own success. I attempted to convey that life is more than just coasting on what you've been given, but they didn't hear me. They made it apparent that they had no intention of working a real job or making any substantial contributions to society. It was like speaking to a brick wall. After supper, I could not stop thinking about it. My children are grown adults, but they behave like pampered teenagers. I couldn't shake the notion that I had let them down somehow. I spent years creating something that may prepare them for life, but instead of appreciating it, they simply take it for granted. Something had to change quickly. The next morning, I sat down with my wife and explained what I was thinking. We needed to stand firm, or our children would grow up to be useless people without a purpose. She wasn't delighted at first. As I previously stated, she is more patient than I am, but she finally agreed that something had to be done. At the next family supper, I informed Caleb and Maya that I was modifying the terms of their inheritance. They would no longer receive any money until they worked full-time for at least 2 years. And by real jobs, I mean full-time work that is unrelated to our family business and pays someone other than us. There will be no begging for a position or requesting favors from our pals. They needed to find their own path. The expressions on their faces were priceless. Caleb actually snorted, as if he couldn't believe I was serious, and Maya simply stared at me as if I had a second head. I stressed that this was non-negotiable. They could either step up and demonstrate their ability to succeed on their own, or they could say goodbye to their inheritance. Caleb was the first to react. He slammed his fork down, claiming it was wrong that I was holding their futures hostage. Maya, never to be outdone, jumped in, claiming that I was attempting to wreck their lives because I did not comprehend the current world. My wife attempted to negotiate, saying that we could find a common ground, but I stayed fast. I assured them that this was for their own good, even if they couldn't see it just now. Caleb and Maya left shortly after that. They both stormed out in rage, screaming about how I was ruining everything. My wife merely glanced at me, as if she didn't know whether she should be angry or proud. I told her I wasn't doing this to be harsh. I just wanted them to mature. But even as I said it, I wondered if I had made a big mistake. The aftermath of that dinner was immediate and severe. Caleb and Maya didn't communicate with us for a week, which is rare given how much they rely on us for everything. My wife was split between supporting me and wanting to smooth things over with the kids, but she ultimately stood by my side. She agreed that they needed a wake-up call, no matter how harsh. Caleb finally called, but it wasn't to apologize. Instead, he preferred to dispute. He said I was being unrealistic, and that expecting him to find a real job was setting him up for failure. He told me I didn't realize how difficult it was for his generation, how the employment market had changed, and how he shouldn't be compelled to do something simply to illustrate a point. I heard but did not back down. I reminded him that everyone has to start somewhere, and that if he was serious about his future, he'd figure out how to make it happen. Maya chose a different method. Rather than confront me directly, she attempted to go through her mother. She informed my wife that she was supporting her brand, and that I was hurting her career by pushing her to take a job she did not want. My wife, bless her, attempted to be diplomatic, But she eventually informed Maya that she needed to stop relying on us and start working on her own. Neither one of them took it well. Caleb accused us of being out of touch, and Maya claimed that we were sabotaging her progress. They both threatened to exclude us from their life, which seemed like a slap in the face. But we did not back down. We informed them that this was non-negotiable, and that if they wanted to inherit anything from us, they had to demonstrate their ability to make it on their own. We're now in a standoff. My wife is attempting to maintain order, but the children refuse to cooperate. They've made it clear that they believe we're being unreasonable and they're not afraid to tell us so. Part of me feels terrible, as if I pushed too hard, but another part of me knows this is the correct thing to do. They need to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, even if it means being furious with us for a while. So Reddit, am I in a *** hole for giving my children this ultimatum? I want the best for them, but I don't want to push them away. Did I go too far, or is this tough love just what kids need? Update 1. 1 month later. Things became even more problematic when I posted about what was going on with my children. Caleb and Maya, still enraged by my ultimatum, decided to include the extended family. They went immediately to my in-laws and even contacted several of my cousins, talking about how unfairly they were handled. It wasn't long before I began receiving phone calls and texts from various family members, some of whom I hadn't spoken with in months, all wanting to comment on the situation. My parents-in-law were the first to call. They were understandably anxious and wanted to know what was going on. My father-in-law, who has always been a softie, believed I was being too severe and suggested I soften up with the kids. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, was more encouraging of my decision. She has witnessed firsthand how spoiled Caleb and Maya have become, and she is concerned that if we continue to enable them, they will never learn to fend for themselves. Then my cousins joined in. One of them, who is more like a brother to me, said he understood my point of view but cautioned me from pushing Caleb and Maya too far. He reminded me that our generation was raised with different ideals, and that I might need to be more aware of the pressures that young people face now. Another relative, a successful lawyer, accused me of attempting to control my children's life and advised me to let them sort things out on their own, even if it meant they failed. Despite the conflicting perspectives, I remained steady. I stressed to everyone who inquired that this was not about controlling Caleb and Maya's lives. It was about ensuring they had the necessary abilities and mindset to achieve on their own. I wasn't asking them to become CEOs overnight, but rather to demonstrate that they could hold down a job and contribute to society. I knew it wouldn't be easy for them, but I felt it was necessary. Caleb and Maya did not take this lying down. Caleb, the more rebellious of the two, decided to start a business. He claimed he was going to start day trading since he had read online about people making a lot of money doing it. He poured his little funds into it, but within weeks, it was evident that he was in over his head. He lost practically everything and then had the audacity to phone me begging for more money to invest. I told him no, that this was not the type of work I was talking about. He hung up on me, and we have not spoken much since. Maya went a different route. She began attending networking events, which appear to be little more than parties where people drink cocktails and discuss their brands. She said she was developing vital connections to help her advance her profession, but I knew otherwise. It was just another method to avoid doing a real job. When I asked how these events were translating into real opportunities, she became defensive and accused me of not believing in her. I informed her that I believed in hard work rather than playing pretend. At this point, it's evident that they're both looking for loopholes in my ultimatum. They want the inheritance without having to work hard, and it's annoying to watch them spend time on these half-baked plans. But as much as it hurts to see them struggle, I'm not backing down. Caleb and Maya began to make less phone calls as the weeks passed. When they did, the conversations were typically heated. They both attempted to guilt-trip my wife and me, claiming that we were abandoning them and that they couldn't believe we were prepared to destroy our relationship for money. Caleb even threatened to cut us off altogether if we did not back down. My wife was upset, but I could tell she was beginning to see things my way. She had always been the peacemaker, but even she was becoming upset with their behavior. We both realized it wasn't just about the money. It was about their futures, and we couldn't allow them to go down this route. Still, it was difficult to hear our children threaten to break ties with us, especially because all we wanted was for them to flourish on their own. At one time, Maya attempted to turn several of our friends against us. She claimed that we were unrealistic, didn't understand the new employment environment, and were setting her up for failure. Some of our acquaintances, particularly those with children of similar ages, sympathized with her, complicating matters even more. We began to receive unsolicited advice from individuals who had no idea what was going on, and it seemed as if the entire world had become engaged in our family drama. Despite this, my wife and I remained on course. We understood that succumbing now would only reinforce the behavior we were attempting to change, but it was difficult, really difficult. And I couldn't help but worry if we were doing the right thing. We decided to reduce Caleb and Maya's monthly allowances to make things more realistic for them. Until now, they had been receiving a rather large sum from us each month, which they spent for everything from rent to shopping sprees. But if we were serious about teaching kids to stand on their own, this had to cease. We also canceled the credit cards associated with our accounts. If they wanted to continue living the way they had been, they'd have to figure out how to pay for it themselves. The reaction was quick. Caleb called, enraged, claiming that we were attempting to bankrupt him. Maya wrote a lengthy emotional email accusing us of being uncaring and said that she didn't know how she would survive without our help. My wife and I read it together, and while it was difficult to watch her sad, we knew it was the push they needed. We responded by assuring her that this was a normal part of growing up and that we were certain she would figure it out if she tried. For the first time, they were confronted with the reality of limited cash. Caleb could no longer afford his expensive hobbies, while Maya had to cut back on her socializing. They were both angry, hurt, and bewildered, but we could only hope that this was the tipping moment. It was a tough love approach, but we felt it was the only way to get through to them. So, Reddit, what are your thoughts? Are we going too far, or is this just what they need? I'm staying solid in my decision, but it's taking a toll on our family. I would appreciate any help or insights you can provide. Update 2. 6 months later. Hello Reddit. We appreciate all of your help and advice over the past few months. It's been a difficult journey, but I thought it was time to update you on what's happened since my last post. First, I'd like to add that I took several of your comments seriously, particularly the ones about mixing tough love with emotional support. So this is what has been going on. Let us start with Caleb. He was missing for a bit after our most recent major disagreement. He wasn't returning calls, and when we did speak with him, it was evident he was still upset over the whole thing. I knew he was going through a difficult period, but I also realized he needed to figure things out for himself, so we gave him space. Caleb realized around 2 months after the ultimatum that he couldn't keep coasting on his remaining savings. With no income and no help from us, he was compelled to look for work. He initially sought to apply for high-paying opportunities in industries where he had no experience, but when those didn't work out, he had to lower his expectations. He eventually got a job at a local manufacturing business. It wasn't flashy, and it wasn't what he wanted. But it was a legitimate job with genuine hours and a real payment. The first few weeks were tough. Caleb frequently complained about the physical effort, the early mornings, and the monotony of the job. He despised every minute of it and made sure we knew. But my wife and I remained supportive, encouraging him to persevere and reminding him that everyone has to start somewhere. He gradually, and I mean slowly, began to acclimate. He began to take pride in his work, and while he would never confess it to me, I could tell he was beginning to recognize the significance of what he was doing. He's been at the facility for nearly 4 months, and while it's still not his ideal job, he's no longer considering quitting every day. He's even started saving a little portion of his paycheck, which he'd never done before. It's a little step, but it's progress, and I applaud him for sticking to it. It's evident he's not quite there yet, but I'm seeing hints of the guy I always knew he could be. Now on to Maya. Her journey has been unique, but equally tough. After we took away her stipend and canceled her credit cards, she tried to keep up appearances for a while. She'd continue to brag on social media about her fantastic life, but it was clear that things were falling apart behind the scenes. Maya eventually understood she couldn't keep pretending things were fine. People stopped attending networking meetings when they discovered she couldn't actually provide anything important in return, and parties ceased being enjoyable when she couldn't afford to keep up with the crowd. It was a terrible wake-up call for her, and for a time, she appeared lost. But then something interesting occurred. One of the people she met at a networking event mentioned an entry-level position with a marketing agency. It wasn't enjoyable, and it certainly wasn't the influencer lifestyle she'd been looking for, but it was a job. After some coaxing and encouragement from my wife, she applied and was hired. She had a difficult first several weeks too. Maya was not used to answering to anyone and struggled to acclimate to the job's structure and deadlines. She contacted us several times in tears, unhappy with her supervisor or overwhelmed by her task, but like with Caleb, We remained supportive while telling her that this was part of growing up. She gradually regained her footing. She's been with the firm for approximately 3 months, and while she still doesn't love it, she's starting to understand the importance in what she's doing. She even discussed taking some courses to hone her talents, which is a significant step for her. With both Caleb and Maya now working, our family's dynamics have begun to evolve. Our once stressful and unpleasant family reunions have gradually become more relaxed. There is certainly some stress. Caleb and Maya aren't delighted with their new circumstances, but there is also a sense of relief. My wife and I have tried to be there for them as much as we can without giving in or bailing them out, and I believe they are beginning to appreciate that. Interestingly, Caleb and Maya have begun to bond via their common professional experiences. They have always been close, but this is different. They are commiserating about their work, sharing anecdotes about their difficulties, and even giving each other advice. It's good to see them supporting one another rather than relying solely on us for everything. Our extended family has also begun to come around. The family who initially condemned our decision are starting to recognize the advantages. They've seen the changes in Caleb and Maya, even commenting on how much more adult they appear. My wife and I still have moments of doubt, but we are increasingly confident that we made the right decision. I won't lie, witnessing my children suffer has been difficult. There have been times when I wondered if I made the right decision. But seeing them gradually begin to figure things out has been fulfilling in its own way. I know they aren't out of the woods yet, but they are making progress, which is all I can ask for. So that's where things are now. I know this trip is far from over, and there will be more hurdles ahead, but I am cautiously optimistic. Thank you again for all of your advice and assistance. It's been quite helpful as we navigate this difficult circumstance. I'll keep you all updated if there are any noteworthy developments. In the interim, any suggestions for how we can continue to help Caleb and Maya without coddling them would be very welcomed. Update 3. 1 year. Mark, hi Reddit. I am back with another update. It's been about a year since the whole affair began, and I wanted to explain where we are now. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who has followed our tale and offered advice. It's been a difficult year, but one of growth for all of us. Recently, we held a large family gathering to review how things were going. Caleb and Maya were both present, as was my wife, and it was the first time we'd all sat down together since the inheritance ultimatum began. I'm not going to lie. I was nervous. I wasn't sure how they'd react or whether they'd be willing to discuss their development. But to my surprise, the chat went better than I had anticipated. I began by telling them how proud I was of the progress they'd made over the last year. Caleb has stuck with his job at the manufacturing factory, and while he doesn't particularly enjoy it, he has made significant progress. He's acquired a strong work ethic, and his supervisor even told me, via a common contact, that Caleb has been doing an excellent job. He started saving money and is thinking of taking some night classes to better his skills. Maya, on the other hand, has begun to establish her foothold in the marketing world. She's still at the same company, but she's taken on additional responsibilities and even directed a few small projects. She's started talking about her job with pride, which I hadn't heard her do before. She's also enrolled in several online classes to expand her knowledge, and she's starting to realize the importance of working her way up rather than expecting everything to come easily. We discussed the inheritance circumstances again to ensure that everyone was on the same page. I underlined that the terms remained unchanged, 2 years of steady, meaningful work before they could get their inheritance. Caleb and Maya both accepted this without fight, which was a huge relief. It's evident they're not happy about it, but they're not fighting it as hard as they were before. As we were winding up our talk, something unexpected happened. Caleb added that his employer had been speaking with him about a promotion. It's not a great leap, but it would entail more responsibility and a higher salary. He appeared shocked that he was being considered, but I was not. I've witnessed the changes in him over the past year, and I'm not surprised that his efforts are being recognized. He's still sorting things out, but for the first time, he's discussing his job as a long-term profession, rather than something he's doing to meet inheritance requirements. Maya also had some news. She's discovered a genuine joy for her marketing career, particularly the creative aspect. She's been discussing with her supervisor the prospect of moving into a more specialized function, and she's even considering returning to school to pursue a degree in marketing. This is a significant departure from the Maya of a year ago, who was more concerned with her social media following than with any genuine career path. It's been incredible to witness these developments in them. They're each starting to discover their own path, and while they still have a long way to go, They're making progress that I never imagined possible a year before. Our family dynamics have improved as a result of all of this, which has been both surprising and enjoyable. There's a true relationship today that didn't exist before. Our interactions are deeper, more meaningful, and less about money or material possessions. Caleb and Maya are beginning to perceive us as more than simply wealthy parents. We are individuals who care about their futures and happiness. We've also witnessed an improvement in Caleb and Maya's relationship. They'd always been close, but there was always a competitive edge between them, driven by who could obtain the most from us or live the most extravagant lifestyle. They now support one another in ways they never did before. They've even talked about collaborating on some side projects, combining Caleb's practical skills with Maya's creative abilities. It's early days, but it's encouraging to see children thinking about how to help one another rather than relying solely on us. This event has also brought me and my wife closer together. We've had to make some difficult decisions as a team, and while we haven't always agreed on everything, we've learned to communicate more effectively and support one another through the obstacles. It's been a learning process for both of us, as parents and partners. So, Reddit is where we're at. I am optimistic about the future, but I am aware that we are not yet out of the woods. The coming year will be critical, especially as they reach the 2-year milestone of the inheritance conditions. We'll continue to assist them as best we can, and I'll keep you all updated on how things proceed. Any ideas or suggestions on how to sustain this momentum would be highly appreciated. Update 4. Final update. Hi Reddit. It's been 2 years since I initially sought your assistance, and I wanted to provide you with one final update. It's been a long trip, and I can't thank you enough for all of your help and advice along the way. This experience has been tough, but also quite gratifying. As we approached the 2-year mark, the family felt a sense of expectancy. Caleb and Maya were both aware that the inheritance circumstances were about to be reviewed, and while they didn't say much about it, I could tell it was on their minds. They'd both come a long way since that fateful supper where I first laid down the law, and I was curious how they'd take this final exam. A few weeks before the 2-year mark, we held another family meeting. I wanted to sit down with Caleb and Maya, learn about their experiences over the last 2 years, and discuss what happens next. My wife and I were both nervous and eager. We'd seen so much progress in them, but we knew this was a key time. When we sat down for the meeting, I began by acknowledging how far they had gone. Caleb and Maya both appeared scared, but I could see pride in their eyes. They knew they'd worked hard, and I wanted to make sure they knew we noticed and appreciated it. Caleb was the first to speak. He discussed his time at the production factory and how he came to see work as more than simply a means to a goal. He's been promoted twice since my last update, and while it's still not his ideal job, he's beginning to recognize the value of hard effort and consistent advancement. He's also begun to take on some side projects, utilizing the talents he's gained at work to create something of his own. It's evident that he's considering his future in a way he never has before. Maya then told her story. She is still with the marketing agency, but her work has become more specialized, with an emphasis on creative projects. She's also taken some college courses in marketing and design, and she's discovered a genuine enthusiasm for her profession. Maya has always been creative, but now she's turning that creativity into something solid, something that could lead to a real job. She's pleased with her accomplishments and optimistic about the future. After they were finished, my wife and I discussed our ideas. We told them how proud we were of their growth, how they had overcome obstacles and learned from them. We discussed how important their trip has been and how it has prepared them for whatever is ahead. Then I surprised them. I informed them that due to their growth, we were increasing their inheritance. I stressed that this was more than just a reward for completing the 2 years. It was a recognition of the individuals they had become. They were astonished and, I believe, overwhelmed, but largely thankful. For the first time, I felt as if they genuinely appreciated the importance of what they were receiving. Not just the money, but also the lessons they acquired along the road. So where are we currently? Caleb and Maya are significantly better off than they were 2 years ago. Caleb is still working at the company while also working on his own projects, and he is considering starting his own firm eventually. Maya is excelling at her marketing agency and is thinking about obtaining a degree full-time. They've both matured tremendously, and I couldn't be more proud. So this is my final sign-off. Thank you for following our story and helping us along the road. If I could leave you with one piece of advice, it would be to never be hesitant to challenge your children, no matter how difficult it may be. Sometimes the most difficult decisions lead to the greatest growth. Good luck to everyone, And I hope your own parenting experiences are as rewarding as ours have been. Take care, Reddit, and who knows, perhaps I'll return someday with another story. Until then, cheers. I've worked hard for 17 years to support my family, only to discover my wife's betrayal and that some of my kids aren't mine. Original post. Hi, I'll try to keep this short. Both in our 30s and have been together 17 years. I male 30s and am the sole provider for my family of 6, partner and 4 kids. 2 high-energy dogs. I work 5 days a week and sometimes work on weekends if we need a little more cash. My partner is a SHM and hasn't worked since our eldest was born, by her own choice. I wake up at 5 a.m. and take the dogs out. Prepare kids' lunches, snacks, ensure all school essentials such as bags etc. are at the front door, then head to work in a physically demanding job. Kids are picked up for daycare, school at 7. Due to after-school activities and clubs etc. they're not home until 6. I come home at 7 and make dinner most nights. Help with homework, do bath time for the little ones, do dishes, take dogs out for a longer walk again, put little ones in bed if the house is a mess, I will of course clean it. I pay for everything: mortgage, bills, insurance, groceries, clothes, toys, technology, after-school activities, dates, a woman to deep clean the house once a month. My partner wants to go on a 2-week-long vacation with her friends, which will overlap with the weekend away I had planned with my brother, who I rarely get to see as we live so far away. She wants me to cancel my trip as she's tired and needs a break. We got into an argument over it in which unkind things were said on both sides, but I am unwilling to budge on this. How do I get through to her that I need some rest? TLDR. I pay for everything, do housework, childcare etc. while my wife is a SAHM. She wants to go on a 2-week-long vacation with her friends, which means I won't be able to go on a weekend trip with my brother, which was planned well in advance. We argued, in which she told me I need to help out more, and I basically said what's in the title. How do I get through to her? Edit, additional info. Hello all, sorry I haven't replied to many comments, but I have read most of them. I've seen a couple questions I'd like to answer and figured that making a post would be better than replying to individual comments. My children are between 16 and 6. My wife doesn't take anyone to their clubs / activities. Younger children's school finishes at 3 p.m. Their clubs are in the school. Older kids' school finishes at 3:30. They stay in a club until 4:30 and then go to a youth group with their cousins until they come home. My eldest makes their way to and from school on their own, while my youngest is picked up and dropped off. Kids are of course able to eat breakfast at home, but often enjoy eating with their friends before school starts at 8. My wife doesn't walk the dogs because she doesn't like to, and frankly, they don't like her. I enjoy my time walking the dogs because it allows me some time to think. We have a large yard with dog houses, toys and some agility equipment for them to use while I'm gone. They also get mental stimulation through Kongs and puzzle toys which have been prepared and stored in the freezer. What does my wife do all day? Honestly, she's not isolated. She often tells me of things she's done with her friends, sister, mother etc. She goes to the gym, does and enjoys hobbies such as embroidery, knitting and some jewelry design. She changes what she likes to do, says it keeps things fresh. Housework-wise, she does the laundry, I fold and distribute later. She will give dogs water and prepared meals. Enrichment. We have those robot vacuums and air purifiers to deal with the dog hair, but my wife will vacuum if heated. I wipe the countertops, put dishes in the dishwasher after meals. Older kids take care of their own rooms, bathrooms for an allowance. Have you ever not truly noticed something until it's right in front of your face? I was so mad because I wanted to go see my brother and she wanted to go on vacation with her friends. Yes, she wants me to pay for it. And things have been like this for so long that I didn't see how unfair and imbalanced things were until I truly started to look at how our duties were distributed. You've all given me a lot to think about. I'll answer some comments later. Update 1. Some of you have suggested that I enable her behavior, and I'd like to address it, to explain how things got this way to begin with. My wife worked from age 16 to 20, but I'd often come home after work during the early stages of her pregnancy and she would tell me of how bad the morning sickness had been and how she was getting in trouble at work for being late or not turning up due to the issues she was having. One night, after a long discussion about things, she suggested that it would be easier and better for her and the baby if she stayed home during the pregnancy. I was reluctant at first because we weren't exactly swimming in cash, but ultimately the health of my wife and child were more important than a few months of added stress. To save money, we moved in with my wife's older sister and her husband. We split rent and utilities, but were still saving some money. The pregnancy wasn't easy on her. She was often cranky and uncomfortable and as a result could be quite mean, rude and a bit handsy. So after further discussions with my wife and her sisters, I took on more of the household duties such as cooking etc. When my eldest was born, my wife's sister helped with childcare while I was at work for the first year, but after she and my wife had a fight when he was about a year old, we moved into our own place. But my wife struggled during the day when I wasn't there to help, so we ultimately decided to put him in another daycare facility. I would drop him off on my way to work and would pick him up on my way back home when I finished. Once home, one of us would cook dinner while the other watched the baby. Back then we had no pets, so household duties weren't too much and could be handled by a couple hours cleaning on Saturday or Sunday when we could split it between us both. When my son was 3, my wife's sister offered to get her a job where she worked. My wife had to do an interview, but my SIL was confident she'd get the position. My wife was reluctant and nervous about returning to work, but attended the interview and was offered the job. I don't remember much of our celebrations that night, but it ended in the conception of our second child. My wife told me when she'd been at her new job for just over a month. She stuck it out for a couple more weeks, but was fired due to not turning up for shifts. I asked one of her doctors about the issues she was having so early in the pregnancy, back pain, leg pain, nausea, etc., but my wife cut me off before I could finish and asked me to leave the room. When we got home, she berated me for speaking to her doctor like she was a child and told me that if she wants something brought up to her doctor regarding her pregnancy, that she'd do it herself. I had embarrassed her because she knew her body and knew what was normal and what wasn't. I still thought the issues had to be addressed with her doctor, but whenever I brought it up her mood swings would get worse. My meal came to live with us when my second was born for a short while when I returned to work after my paternity leave. When my daughter was about 4 months old, my wife expressed that she was having difficulty looking after her by herself during the day, but my Mill, who had her own life and responsibilities, couldn't come back and stay indefinitely. We had a 2-bedroom apartment then and having her sleep on the couch didn't seem fair to me. So we enrolled my daughter in daycare while my son was at nursery. My son went to daycare after nursery as well, so I'd pick them both up around 6 p.m. and head home. My wife promised she would speak to her doctor about the possibility of depression etc., and her mood did improve with the additional help with the children. My wife took on cooking and cleaning duties then, but struggled as well. I would often come home to burned, ruined food, and would need to make something else anyway. So I ended up cooking dinner most nights so we wouldn't be wasting food. During a weekend away for a friend's wedding, when my daughter was 5, I suggested that my wife go back to work. Both kids were in school now and I thought we could improve our lifestyle with 2 incomes. We had recently bought a house because the apartment was too small for us and the children needed their own rooms. She seemed hesitant, which I understood after being out of work for so long, but she agreed. She applied for several positions but had no luck with interviews or callbacks. We found out she was pregnant with our third not long after that, and returning to work was put on hold again. The pregnancy was difficult as expected, but again my Mill came to stay when I had to return to work. She stayed for a while but had to return to her own home eventually. Before she left, my wife told me that she feared she would struggle with our second daughter just as she had the first 2. I tried to reassure her, but she seemed to become insanely depressed the second her mother left. I would return home with the 8 and 5-year-old to a screaming baby and nothing done around the house. Her mood and actions affected the entire house. So reluctantly I put her second daughter in daycare as well, but I told my wife she had to talk to her doctor and that we'd no longer be having any more children. She was, and we had a huge fight about it. But I got a vasectomy and she accepted it. We've always used protection. My wife is on birth control and I always use condoms, but given that it had already failed twice for us, when my first was conceived after my 21st I was so drunk I don't think I wore one, our second after celebrating her new job, and our third at our friend's wedding. I didn't want it to happen again. But obviously the universe had other plans for us, and our third daughter was born 2 years after our second when we were celebrating a promotion I'd gotten at work. Obviously this is a brief summary of events and there have been several other moments through the years when I've suggested she go back to work, but I thought I'd try to provide further background for those who are curious about how we got to where we are. Someone asked if my wife has had a break recently. She has never taken 2 weeks away before, but she goes away a couple of times every year for weekend trips with family and friends. The longest she has been gone is a week. In regards to the dogs and why they don't like her, she doesn't like them. She thinks the mental stimulation I provide through Kong toys, games, puzzles etc. is unnecessary but freaks out if their energy levels are too high. One is a German Shepherd which I was gifted for my birthday and the other is a German Shepherd Malinois mix my wife brought home because she thought our GSD needed a friend. Yes, they have been to training and were originally in doggy daycare for the first couple years. On to the update. Update 2. So, as one of you suggested, I took a day off of work. I genuinely wasn't feeling too good either, but I intended to speak to my wife about the situation while the children were at school. Kids all left for school by 7-ish. My wife came downstairs at 11:45 and seemed very shocked to see me. She asked what I was doing at home and I explained I took a sick day as I wasn't feeling well. The first words out of her mouth were, "But we need the money, you don't look that bad." I made a face, and she quickly asked what was wrong and asked if she could get me anything. I asked for water and we sat on the couch, but soon her phone rang and she went off into the kitchen to talk. She came back a while later and asked if I wanted to get something to eat, and I said we could make something from the kitchen. She said she wanted to go out and I said we could order takeout, but I wasn't in the mood to go out. The dogs had been sitting by the chest freezer waiting in the pantry for their lunchtime enrichment for 10 minutes now, and I asked if she was going to feed them. She flopped onto the couch and asked me to get it. I said no. She asked again, and I said no, again. She glared at me, but eventually got up and gave it to them. She asked me to take her out again several times, and I kept saying no. I was starting to get a migraine, which I told her, but she kept asking, suggesting we could go shopping, she could get her nails done and we could enjoy the day together. I refused, said we had something to talk about and she said we would then go upstairs. She came back down 40 minutes later dressed up and said if I wasn't going to take her out, she'd go herself. I tried to get her to sit down so we could talk, but she blew me a kiss at the door and rushed outside without even locking it. While she was out, I took some of your advice and canceled the cleaning lady we have. I apologized to her, as I really did like her but she was very understanding and I think we parted on good terms. She returned home at 8 p.m. and immediately asked where dinner was. I told her the kids and I had already eaten. She asked where her dinner was and I told her she'd have to make something for herself. She said she'd just order something and I told her no. This gave her pause and she looked at me like I'd just told her she had to starve. She said she couldn't cook and so told her I know she's perfectly capable of making something. We have plenty of food, it's not like she has to be Gordon Ramsay to stick a tin of soup or something on the stove. She left again, and returned 30 minutes later with McDonald's for herself which set the younger kids off. Yes, they'd already eaten but she walked in the door finishing her burger and drink with an empty bag and McFlurry tub. Our youngest asked why she didn't bring her any ice cream and my wife said Daddy said I wasn't allowed to. I did not say this, and I swear it took more strength than I'd like to admit not to yell at her in front of our daughter. When the kids were in bed, I asked her to sit and talk about the situation regarding our trips. She asked if I'd rescheduled with my brother and I firmly told her no and that I wouldn't be. I tried to have a conversation. I explained I felt our duties were incredibly uneven and that I'd like for her to take on more responsibilities with the children and the house. She argued that she does enough and I asked her to make a list. She put laundry down, feeding the dogs, making doctor's appointments and grocery shopping. And I brought out my own list with everything I've told you guys so far and added that I created the dogs' meals, she simply has to give it to them, I fold and distribute laundry, take kids to doctor's appointments and that the groceries are ordered through an app on her phone, delivered to the house and I put them away. She got up then. I asked what she was doing and she said she was going upstairs. I didn't argue. I didn't want it to resolve an argument and wake the kids up. She was visibly shaking with anger. A while later I went upstairs as well. She was on the phone to someone and when I entered the room she demanded I leave and go sleep on the couch. I refused and climbed into bed. She hung up the phone and demanded again that I sleep on the couch and again I refused. She grabbed me and physically tried to drag me out. That resulted in a fight and I ended up sleeping on the couch because she was going to wake the kids up again. The following days were much the same. I have stopped folding and putting away her laundry. I do it for myself and the younger kids and my two oldest take their piles and put them away themselves. I still cook for the kids, but have told my wife that she has to make her own meals. Petty, I know. I think my eldest heard us arguing because he asked if he could take the dogs out for a couple walks with his friend during the week. He hazes, and he says he's enjoying it but I think he and my wife had an argument the other day because he's been very distant with her and things just feel off. He's asked me about 3 times if I love him, or course I've told him there is nothing he could ever do to make me not. Yes, I've tried to talk to him about it, but he doesn't want to talk yet and I need to respect that. I think pushing him could be a mistake. Thursday night my wife asked if we could have a drink as I had to leave on Friday to see my brother. I had one but honestly it went right to my head and honestly just wanted to sleep. She kept trying to initiate sex, but I wasn't in the mood. I woke up Friday morning and my wife was gone. So was her suitcase. I've texted and called but there's been no answer other than a text telling me we'd talk about it when she's back. She ignored me and went on her trip regardless and I am furious. I have left her some cash in the bank account, she has the card too, but have removed everything else into another account. I had to tell my brother why I wouldn't be coming to see him, and he arrived here on Saturday with my nephew and 2 nieces. The house is very full, but honestly it feels more open than it has in a long time. The kids seem relaxed and so do the dogs. I don't know what will happen with my wife, but I am done. I can't afford a lawyer right now and unfortunately I don't know anyone who could give me a deal or do me a favor, but this marriage is over. It should have been a long time ago TLDR. Wife and I talked, had an argument, she went on trip regardless and my brother is here with his family. This sub only allows one update, so if I post anything further it will be on my own profile. Relevant comments. OOP on if his wife might have undiagnosed health problems including PPD. OOP. I spoke to her doctor about the issues she was having because she would not. He asked her what was happening, how she was and she would say the pregnancy was fine, she was having no issues yet at home all I got was how hard things were, how ill she felt, how sore she was. Screaming, yelling at me. I went to bed because I am 6.5 and work a physically and mentally demanding job. It is not good for my body to sleep on a 2-seater couch. I wanted to sleep as I had work in the morning, she escalated and got physical, not me. She made the argument worse, not me. Undiagnosed PPD? She has been to her doctor who had diagnosed her with nothing, she told me so herself, and as for me knocking her up, it takes 2 people to create a child. We do not live in America and my wife is pro-choice, if she wants to terminate. She has the ability to do so. I told her after our second was born that I didn't think having more kids was a good idea, and she insisted. I said the same thing after our third and after my vasectomy and she lost her mind. Let her go on vacation and feel like herself for the first time in forever. Did she not feel like herself when she went on multiple weekends away last year with her friends? Does she not feel like herself when she's hanging with the girls for lunch dates throughout the month? Do you know the last time I saw my brother in person? Before the pandemic. He is here to support me. If you want my wife to go on vacation so I can't, then it's perfectly reasonable that my brother can come to the home I pay for when I need him. Are you my wife? Update 3. I'm not going to add this to the post as it's already long enough. Please excuse any spelling mistakes as I'm so tired. Thank you all, but I'm not in America. I know a lot of you have suggested I message her telling her I'm going to divorce her etc., but I think I'm going to play it cool, act like I've accepted her decision so she's not on guard. I know she said something to my son, but he won't tell me what it is and I feel like if I push him to he might not ever, but my nephew and him are hanging out a lot. They're close despite not seeing each other much so I'm hoping he might confide in him and maybe open up. I'm not just letting this go, we will talk but I don't want to push him too much. I am not a lightweight, I can drink. But I have been exhausted and I mean very exhausted for some time now and I think that maybe that's why I passed out after having one drink. But I would be lying to myself and to you if I said I wasn't suspicious. I am suspicious a lot now. I swear, I'm not an idiot, but I really feel like one now. Some of you have suggested that I get the kids' DNA tested, especially my youngest, and while I know that this is likely something I'll have to do, it breaks my heart to think that they're not mine. My girls all look the same, just older versions of each other, so if I have to DNA test the youngest, I have to do them all. I never wanted kids. This is why I've always used condoms. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I love my own. I love these kids, regardless of the DNA test. They are mine, but I fear if it comes back that they're not. It could damage our relationship. My brother has read my posts and spent the last days telling me everything he hates about my wife, obviously not in front of the kids. He's pretty funny and I feel like I haven't been able to laugh like this in a long time. He says he's going to make a Reddit account, Lord knows what he'll say. Writing this update has opened my eyes further. I see how the timing of wanting her to go back to work leans up with each pregnancy, but when these things are years apart, and you're concentrating on supporting the family and work, your brain sometimes pushes these thoughts away until something triggers them again and boom, You're slapped in the face with the realization that your entire relationship is potentially built on a mountain of lies. She has her phone and iPad with her, so I can't check any of that. But I'm going to be going through her stuff. Is it in envisioning privacy? Likely. Do I care right now? No. I feel like I've wasted the majority of my life, the good years, and that feels horrible to say when I have 4 kids. I promise I don't mean that they're a waste. As I said in the post, this marriage is over. I am done. My kids deserve better, but I won't be alone when I confront her. As I said, she can get handsy, and no, I have never retaliated, and I don't want to be put into a position where I need to. I thank you all for your comments, your insight, your kindness. I know I haven't replied to many comments at all, but don't really have time to do so when there are so many, but I am trying to respond to DMs as that seems like the easier thing to do. I want to ask my Sil what actually happened with my wife and that job. But I don't want her to know I'm suspicious. My Sil is a kind woman, but she is my wife's sister, so her loyalties lay with her, I suppose, and I don't want to alert my soon-to-be ex. Does anyone have any ideas how I can do this? Seems odd to bring up a job my wife had for a very brief time years ago. I wish you all the best. Relevant comments. OOP on the accusations for not respecting his wife's needs and wants. OOP, how do I not respect her needs, wants? I pay for everything and do the majority of the child, pet care and housework. I have not gone on vacation in years because I was providing for my family. I have given her everything she's wanted for the past 17 years and she couldn't give me a weekend with my brother. Why couldn't we both go on vacation? Because I don't randomly have the money to fund 2 weeks away for her. I can't just up and leave my 16-year-old to look after 3 younger kids and 2 high-energy dogs. I couldn't take them with me because that would mean multiple plane tickets and accommodations, food etc. for them, as well as dog sitting, boarding for the dogs. New update. Hello all, I'm sorry it's taken so long to update. Things are not good. While this update will be small, I will try to do a longer one when things are a little better. Yes, we are separated and will be getting a divorce. My FIL has graciously offered to help. It's taken me so long to update because, as most of you already knew, some of the children aren't mine. My eldest son is mine, my 3 daughters are not. I found out not long after my first update. And while I thought I could handle the news clearly, my body couldn't and I had a heart attack. Thankfully my brother was with me and called an ambulance. I am recovering, but Jesus Christ scared the shite out of me and my family. As some of you may remember, when my ex left for vacation, I took the majority of the money out of the account she used but left some as I didn't want to leave her stranded. That money, about 500 or so, was gone in a few days. She used her own money that she's been making from OnlyFans to fund her trip. Yes, I'm serious. She has only a fan account. My son had offered to take the dogs out for me during his lunch/free class time and walked in on his mother making content. In the living room. She told him that I wasn't making enough money for the family to survive and that she had to be the only fan to help support us. She told him I was ashamed and embarrassed and that I would be very unhappy and hurt if he mentioned it. She told him that doing so could ruin our marriage and could lead us to divorce. My in-laws know everything, as my brother had to call them to help watch my kids while I was in the hospital. My FIL is furious and my MIL is just devastated. She keeps apologizing to me, like she's the one who betrayed me. My ex moved out. She tried to make me leave so she could stay in the house with the kids, but after a conversation with her father, she's renting a place. My eldest daughter and my son know the girls aren't mine. My ex told them after they said they didn't want to go live with her at her new place. My Mill was with them at the time and, according to my daughter, began screaming at my wife for her behavior. My youngest 2 don't know yet. But they will. This isn't something I can keep from them forever. They already know that something is up. I've cut my hours back at work and have been able to work from home. It's obviously a desk job for now, but I am thankful to my boss for working with me on this. I came home to find out that my Mill and one of my Sils had cleared out my wife's hobby space and made it an office den for me. I am very grateful for their support during this. I know it can and be easy to take the side of your daughter, sister's ex-partner during a breakup, but I appreciate them. While things aren't great by any stretch of the imagination, I feel strange. Things seem calmer without my ex in the house. There seems to be more laughter around, and even the dogs appear more at ease. But I am so angry, which obviously isn't good for my heart. I've wasted a huge chunk of my life raising kids that aren't mine in a marriage that was messed up from the beginning. Now please, don't take what I said as me saying I regret my girls. I don't at all. They are smart, beautiful, cheeky little weirdos in love with all of my heart. But the betrayal stings. The fact that I've been working my ass off for years and she's been making thousands on OnlyFans and been keeping it to herself stings. I am ashamed, humiliated, embarrassed, angry, relieved. It's a mess of emotions in my head. But I know I'll get through it. Hopefully, I need to for my kids and dogs. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer in the comments. Am I the asshole for divorcing my wife after she thought I was lying about being raped as a child? As context, I was repeatedly raped by my brother's babysitter when I was around 9. She would grope me, force me to remove my pants and then either stick my dick in her mouth or try and give me a handjob whenever my 4-year-old brother slept. Most of the time I was paralyzed and couldn't do anything to stop it. She would always buy me sweets or video games for my DS as a reward. So in a weird way I started growing attached to her and would try and seek the abuse if it meant getting her rewards. I knew whatever she was doing was wrong, but she would always threaten to take my life if I ever told my parents, so I never did while the abuse was actively happening. Everything stopped as soon as she graduated college and moved states. I only realized how fucked up the things she did to me were when I was around 14-15 and understood the concept of consent. When I tried to open up to my parents, strict Catholics, it never ended well. First, they blamed it on porn and claimed it corrupted my mind into imagining these things happening to me. If I claimed I was telling the truth, my dad would beat the shit out of me and my mom would ground me. I tried opening up to my friends, but their reactions weren't any better. My male friends just called me lucky and asked if the BJ was good. My female friends claimed I was just lying to get attention and laughed in my face. I learned to just try and forget the past and vowed to myself that I would never mention this to anyone again. Now on to last week. My wife had heard some good things about this show called Baby Reindeer on Netflix from our friends. Going into it, I knew it revolved around sexual abuse and stalking. In my mind, I thought I was over the past, and I could handle watching the show no problem. Big fucking mistake. At the end of episode 4, I was literally on the verge of tears and I felt all the supposedly forgotten memories come flooding back. At the end of the next episode, I couldn't hold it in anymore. My wife paused the show and just stared at me. After a while, I did finally manage to calm down a bit. She asked me why I was crying and I just let everything out. She said she was sorry, hugged me, and we went to bed soon after. I apologized to her the following morning for ruining our night. From the moment I let her know about the abuse, I felt something change in our relationship. No more kisses when I came back from work and no more initiating anything intimate from her side. She wasn't mean or anything, but I felt like something was bothering her. I tried to apologize for maybe making her uncomfortable, but she would just claim there was nothing bothering her and I was just being paranoid. Yesterday, me and my wife got into a pretty heated argument about her lying about taking out the trash, but during the argument she said something that floored me beyond belief. She literally said, "At least I'm not lying about being raped, you fucking narcissist." I literally couldn't process whatever just came out of her mouth. She tried apologizing right after saying that, but I just packed a few clothes and left to stay at my friend's house. She tried calling me several times since, but I haven't bothered picking up and have blocked her for time being. I know I might have trauma dumped on her and I know women aren't into that, but I just want some sort of acknowledgement, support. I don't have anyone left to turn to with this, and that's why I'm posting here. I've had 2 therapists to date and both didn't seem to help much. My gut is telling me to divorce her, but she's genuinely the love of my life. Throwing away 6 years because of this one moment doesn't sit right with me, but IDK. WIBTA for divorcing her? Am I actually the asshole here? I would love to hear some of your guys' opinions on my situation, and if you've read this all the way through, thank you. Relevant comments. Danny Caps fan. My heart aches for you. Being sexually abused is bad enough, but that nobody believed you and either mocked you or punished you for telling what happened is horrific. And I was going to suggest therapy, but I looked at your post again and saw that it didn't do much for you. Maybe a rape crisis center will be able to recommend a therapist who has experience with victims of CSA. What your wife said is appalling. It seems you feel she doesn't love you since your revelation and isn't on your side. That's reason enough to want to leave her. NTA Gnome 5314, NTA. You did something brave by opening up and she threw it back in your face. I'm sorry that you've faced such rejection your whole life. Unfortunately, that is all too common for men who have been sexually assaulted. It's up to you to decide if you want her back, but either way is valid. OP, thank you so much. I'm pretty sure this happens a lot to women as well. I went to a few anonymous meetings and heard a lot of the same from women who claim people just thought they were trying to get a settlement or something. Hot Cross Buns, 72, NTA. As a CSA survivor, the turning point for me in my marriage was when he told me to get over it, and it's been so long. We are now divorced. While it wasn't the sole reason I left, knowing that he wasn't a safe space for me anymore, if at all, was a driving force. So while I won't tell you to leave her, I will say you do need to speak with a professional regarding the assault and keep her at a distance while you work through your emotions. She can never take back what she said to you, and there needs to be consequences for that. Send PHX. And to add to the part about talking to a professional, OP, you mentioned the ones you've talked to haven't helped. I would keep trying and go to a different therapist until you find one with whom you mesh well. See if you can find one who has a focus on sexual abuse trauma, and even check if they have experience in this area with male clients. Unlucky_addendum. 3425, NTA also. I wouldn't call what you did trauma dumping. You opened up to your wife. You're supposed to support each other. I'm sure she was probably shocked, would explain some of her lack of empathy. But to call you a liar and a narcissist, no. You've spent enough time being invalidated by assholes. Deleted user, not only that. Weaponize the trauma of one of the worst things that could ever happen to someone to make OP feel small, guilty, betrayed, insecure, alone, invalid, then call them a narcissist and a liar. To retaliate for being called out not taking the bins out. It's monstrous. OP is right to consider that an instant relationship ends. Because fuck me, it's so many layers of evil. Imaginary Yak 6487, NTA. Therapy. I'm a CSA survivor. I'm a woman. I told my ex-husband about some of it after a trauma response to something he was attempting to do sexually. I wasn't comfortable and didn't think I could. He seemed to be understanding. One night after he had been drinking heavily, he tried to do this again and I said no. He said, "Why not? I'm not the one who RP'd you, so don't take your bullshit out on me by denying me." He assaulted me and did it anyway. Did y'all know that back in the late 80s there was no laws on the books about martial rape until 1993? BC, you couldn't rape your wife back then? He's an ex-husband for a reason. She needs to be an ex for a reason as well. I wish you the best. Leanna Shaw. I don't think you can call that trauma dumping. If she was some random girl you were on a first date with, yeah, sure. But she's your wife, and that's the sort of established relationship that should be a safe place for you to open up about past traumas. The fact that it ended up *not* being safe isn't your fault, and I'm so sorry that she responded to you the way she did. I understand feeling conflicted about divorce, because it is such a hard thing to go through, but you absolutely would not be wrong to do so. I wish you the best, whatever you decide to do. AITA does not have a consensus bot, but OOP was voted NTA in most comments. Most of the comments were supportive, giving advice and telling their stories. Some downvoted commenters advised OOP to never cry or open up in front of women. Update. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for all the amazing love and support. For the first time in my life I felt heard and didn't just feel like a burden to people. I don't know what I did to deserve any of this, but I just want to let you all know that I'm beyond grateful. As for the update. Shortly after posting, I decided to go back home. I had work the next day and didn't want to burden my friend with my marital issues any longer. Upon coming home I was met with her screaming at me for just leaving the apartment and ghosting her without having an adult conversation with her. I just let her know how hurt I was by the things she said to me and that I needed some time to myself to gather my thoughts. She tried arguing back with how there is nothing to think about and that I was being an immature crybaby. From that point onwards we have barely been on speaking terms. I know a lot of people are going to be mad hearing this, but the longer I thought about my marriage and my wife, the more I wanted to give her another chance. She wasn't perfect by any means, but neither was I. A lot of my past relationships ended as a result of my past catching up with me, but I really want to change it this time. She isn't the first partner friend to have this type of reaction to what I went through. I know it's tough, but I feel like I just needed to bite the bullet if it meant keeping my sanity. I didn't want to start over again. After we somewhat started talking to each other again, I sat her down for a serious conversation and let her know again how hurt I was by everything she said. I let her know about all the ridicule I suffered as a result of me opening up and her having the same reaction, just reopened unhealed wounds. She just kept quiet until I mentioned couples therapy. She then started crying, but not for the reason I thought. I tried holding her, but she just pushed me away and screamed that I seriously thought about ending our marriage over some silly argument we had and that I was just trying to make up some sob story after watching Baby Reindeer for attention and sympathy. According to her, all of this was just too convenient to be believable. If it was real, why didn't I mention any of this throughout the 6 years we have been together? At this point I even started tearing up. I apologized for keeping this from her for so long and then tried reassuring her that I in fact wasn't making this up, but she just slapped me and stormed off to bed. That was a week ago and I have been sleeping on the couch ever since. Whenever I try to speak to my wife, she just makes snarky comments towards me and just storms off. I just cry myself to sleep most nights and just wish I never fucking watched that show. None of this shit would have happened. I currently don't have the money for therapy and just feel lost. I don't want a divorce. I want to try and make this work, but this whole mess is just so draining. I'm not in contact with my family, so I don't have anyone I can turn to with this. How would you guys move forward in this situation? Relevant comments. Just Anthony. There is no saving this relationship. From the looks of it, you're going to end up miserable and ultimately stop telling her things to avoid arguments and/or belittling from her end. Be honest with yourself. What exactly are you looking for in marriage counseling? She'll need her own individual therapy before she can take on marriage counseling. It won't get anywhere if only one person acknowledges there's a problem. OP, I understand you've been with her for 6 years and she's by far the best you've had, but she isn't the best for you, let alone the one. Why compromise the rest of your life to her when you can get out and move on? You're only 27. You have so much time to get out there and find someone who loves and respects you. All of you. You still have so much time to find someone who'll take you and your trauma seriously, who will work with you every step of the way no matter what it is, who will own up to their own faults in a so-called adult conversation. You deserve better. You know you do. Don't settle for less. You wouldn't treat yourself the same way your wife does. Get therapy, when you have the money, and work on yourself if you believe that you have flaws of your own that contribute to a relationship's failure. It's a cliché saying, but it's better to have no company than bad company. OP, everyone here supports and believes in you. The only person left is you. You can do it. Within 10 years, you will look back at this and thank yourself for leaving this situation. It's hard work, but you can do it. Fits design. At the end of the day, staying with her is increasing your trauma. Please leave her for your own sake. Ratty handwriting. Sir, I have been married for 18 years. I have known my husband for 22 years. After 9 years together, he disclosed that he was attacked and raped at the age of 14, after knowing throughout our relationship that I was also a survivor of child sexual abuse. I tell you this because I want you to know what my response was. I held him while he cried. I asked if he wanted to report it to the police. I supported him when he didn't. I encouraged him to seek counseling. When he was ready, I talked to him about my own experiences. At no point, did I belittle him, disbelieve him, make him feel less of a man, criticize him, tear him down, and I certainly did not act physically violent towards him. Your wife's behavior is so far on the other fucking side of normal, I wonder, frankly, if she's human. You deserve better. This is cruel and vicious behavior on the part of your wife. She's a horrible, horrible person and she will never improve, but you have the rest of your life to live happily. Please, 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 walk away. Odd_task, 8211. What you are going through isn't normal and this is not a healthy relationship. Your wife is abusive. She belittles your experience as an abuse survivor. Then she hit you. That's 3 strikes in my book. You can do much better than this abusive woman. For your own mental health, you would be better off without her. OOP. I understand, but I'm afraid I won't find another GF wife after her. I have issues being intimate, sexually, and rightfully a lot of women aren't into that. My wife was waiting till marriage, so it worked out perfectly for the both of us. Sons of Sparta 1984. Dude. I was also raped as a boy, by a man. There's plenty of women who don't judge for that kind of thing. The fear of being alone shouldn't keep you in an abusive relationship. Up until where she slapped you, it could have been explained away by a bad reaction to uncomfortable information, but it's never okay to hit someone you're in a relationship with, regardless of who has what in their pants. OP. Yeah, she wasn't the first partner I've had that slapped me. I just added it to my update thinking it wasn't that big of a deal, but people here have made me realize it isn't normal. First_alfalfa 2805. People start over in their 70s, and you are going to stay with this unsympathetic woman. A woman who doesn't care enough to believe you and then belittle you. Are you seriously willing to stay in this relationship? Sir, you were sexually abused. Your wife doesn't care and isn't supportive and is mentally abusive towards you. Well, if you don't want to start over, okay. OP, thank you, but please understand that I've spent 6 years with her, 7 in August. She's the first one that was willing to accept some of the flaws I have. Edit. I've realized that I'm just beating a dead horse by using this as justification to stay with her. I'm contacting a divorce lawyer. iReddit. 74. You're talking about what's called a sunk cost fallacy. It's the belief that because you've invested so much time and money into something that you can't give it up. This marriage has run its course. Burdened, Mind 79. Accept you? She ridiculed you, and then when you apologized, which you did not need to do, quite frankly, she physically assaulted you. She called you a liar and struck you. This woman does not accept you. She's even turned down the option of couples therapy, so clearly has no interest in making this work. What she wants is for you to be wrong and her to be right, and she's not going to change until you bend your reality to fit her desires. You can't do that, because it will destroy you. If you think wasting 6 years is bad, just imagine how you'll feel when you've wasted 40 years on someone who belittles your trauma and hits you when she can't handle the reality of a situation. Think about that for a while. Do you really want to spend decades living with someone who thinks the best way of dealing with situations she doesn't like is to simply hit you and run away? You can do better. New update. Again, I just want to thank everyone for the amazing love and support you guys have shown me on my last 2 posts. Even though the response on my last post wasn't what I expected, it was a reality check for me. I'm beyond grateful for all the DMs, and I promise I'll get to responding to all of them someday, but I'm going through a lot at the moment, so please bear with me. I have over 200 unread DMs. After I posted my update, I realized that I was definitely in an abusive relationship, and even though I wanted to make the marriage work, she has shown zero willingness to change her attitude towards what I went through. 2 days after posting my update, I contacted a lawyer and filed for divorce. I gave her plenty of chances, and she has time and time shown me that she won't even acknowledge my trauma, let alone show me any form of support. I initially kept everything a secret and slowly started preparing my assets, savings, joint bank accounts, etc. I did finally tell her about me filing for divorce, and she didn't take it well. She tried fighting it and claimed I will never find anyone else that's willing to put up with a giant pussy who can't even admit he wanted whatever happened to him. According to her, no woman is willing to put up with an attention-seeking crybaby like myself. I'm not going to lie. What she said got me, and for a brief moment I considered halting the divorce, but after she came home drunk one night and berated me for an hour straight, she snapped me back into reality. I don't know where the woman I fell in love with went, but that wasn't her. Looking back now, she'd given me plants of red flags, but I just ignored them for the sake of being loved for once in my life. For once I wasn't called gay for not being able to have sex when immediately getting into a relationship, wasn't laughed at for having random seizures, etc. I moved out of our apartment after her rant and have been staying with my friends ever since. After she realized I wasn't coming back anytime soon, she DM'd all my friends claiming that I was an attention whore and was making up some sob story about being raped and that she was the one actually filing for divorce. Not only that, but she also told them that I was physically abusive, and according to her, they shouldn't hang around a guy that hits women. Most of my friends just immediately called me names, told me I failed as a man, and blocked me. The friend I'm currently staying with seems to be the only person on my side. I also want to mention that I moved away from the US to live with my grandparents in Europe when I was 19. I mentioned it in one of my comments, so I thought I'd mention it here. There were people who thought that she might have contacted my parents, and that fueled her reaction to the abuse I faced. There is literally zero chance she can contact them, since I didn't even tell her their names. I was doing an apprenticeship at a bank, and she even started sending them evidence of me abusing her. I have no clue what she wrote to them. I had a meeting with HR on the 20th and they've decided to fire me. I tried fighting it, but they just said that I wasn't worth the hassle. I'm now back doing construction, don't have a proper education, and have lost almost all of the people I'm close with. I'm just beyond tired at this point. Not angry, not sad, just numb. I feel like whenever I try to take a step forward, I take 3 steps backwards. Maybe I am just this unlovable and pathetic. Maybe I deserve all that's coming to me. I just don't know anymore. As stated by the title, this will be my last post. Reddit has given me so much great advice and made me realize so many things, and I'm beyond grateful for every single one of you who helped me, but it's also destroyed my mental health. For every 50 positive and supportive comments and DMs I've received, I've had one person say the same things I've heard all my life, and I've let those people get to me. A lot of people asked me why the hell I have such strong feelings towards my babysitter giving me blowjobs. First of all, I was 9 and she on multiple occasions threatened to take my life. Second of all, I left a lot of the other details out of my post because those memories are just too painful and I didn't think it was relevant for the purpose of my original post. I'm going to mention them here since I've nothing left to lose at this point. She would shove things up my ass like cucumbers, pens, etc. She would regularly hit me in the balls to punish me for disobeying her. She would dress me up as a girl and would force me to dance for her and pose in suggestive positions. There were times where I couldn't walk properly because of the things she did to me, and I got ruthlessly bullied in school as a result. How would you guys navigate my situation? Any advice would be appreciated. Thank you so much for reading this far into my post and supporting me over these past few weeks. Just a big thank you to 2u/writing_mm_romance and you in that page for checking up on me and genuinely being amazing human beings. They helped me through some seriously dark times. Relevant comments. Historical Maine. 8196. I'm so sorry, you didn't deserve this, not at all. Please change your number and any other contact information you have. If you are still at your friend's place, please use that time to find a job, something you can use to support yourself. I don't know how hard it may be for you to get an education degree, but it doesn't hurt to try. Also, if she comes at you again, document any form of contact in case the authorities get involved. Xcypher 96. I'm so sorry for what has happened to you. You deserve better. I'm surprised most of your friends really believed her story over yours. Did you try to explain your side to them? OOP. Yes, but they didn't listen. She used my mental health issues, ADHD and BPD, as a way to back up her claims, and they all believed her. Base clean. I'm terribly sorry that this happened to you. All of it. I am a survivor too, and it really fucks you up. It never leaves you, but you can work through it. It takes time and dedication. I'm sure that there are free support groups. I don't know where you are located, but in the US there's one that's specifically for male survivors. Just keep taking good care of yourself. I'm so glad you've found support here. You deserve it and all the good things. Also, she is obviously a miserable person and karma will come for her. I feel like you have a form of receipts in your posts here to show your innocence, but who would want to be friends with people like that? It's a tough pill to swallow, but just look at the whole thing as getting rid of a lot of dead weight. I would also consult with a lawyer about that employer letting you go. LMK if there's anything I can do to help. Fiancé proposes with a $38 Temu ring, now I'm wondering if I should marry him. Am I the asshole for wanting a better ring and questioning our future? Original post. My 27F fiancé, 29M, proposed to me a few weeks ago. It caught me completely by surprise, but we've been together for 3 years and things have been going great. So I was really excited and said yes. I really liked the ring when I first saw it, and my friends and family all think it is stunning. It's an oval cut with diamonds across the band. I asked where he got it and he wouldn't tell me where, but that he got a great deal on it. I didn't think anything of it until yesterday when we were in bed and I asked him if it was diamond or moissanite, mainly out of curiosity. I don't have a preference BTW. He said he didn't know and would have to look it up. When I glanced over at his phone, he was in the Temu app. I asked him if he got it from there and he didn't respond. So I asked again and he responded with something like, "Does it matter?" and left the room and ended up sleeping on the couch. I spent all night so confused. Today I decided to download the app and look up my ring and I found one that looks identical. I found the exact ring and it listed at $38. I am mad. He makes good money, 200K/YR, and I feel like he could have shelled out some money for a ring better than one on Temu. AITA for telling him I don't want it? OOP's comments. OOP's thoughts. Okay, I'm not mad that the diamonds are not real. But I worry about the quality of the ring because I imagine my engagement ring to at least be sturdy. It's fine for now, but I have a hard time believing it'll last longer than a year if it's $38 on Temu. Commenter. NTABC, that thing might turn your finger green. He's lucky you don't have a sensitivity to fake metals like some do. He makes good money but bought a $38 ring. Is he cheap with other things where this discount shopping isn't a new thing for him and he's just an all-around penny pincher? My first thought was, did he not spend the money because he doesn't want to expect this to last? OOP. Yeah, let me provide some more context. Really, he's never been overly frugal. I'm probably more frugal than he is. Neither of us are huge spenders, but we each make enough to not have to strictly budget or anything. We have our own accounts and split rent equally. I know he has at least $100K across his savings investment accounts. We go out for drinks a few times a week and we'll go to concerts together and whatnot frequently. We travel a few times a year and stay in basic accommodations. Like our DoorDash the other night was $40. My ring costs less than DoorDashing dinner. Commenter. You are NTA, but what we all really want to know is whether or not you would still marry him if he replaces the ring. OOP. The responses to this have made me even more confused. People saying it could be a loyalty test, that he doesn't want me to be able to sell it if we divorce, or that he doesn't plan to be with me for long. I have a pit in my stomach. I haven't considered breaking things off, but that was before I wrote this here. I was thinking maybe he was just not thinking or rushed getting the ring, or maybe he genuinely thought he was getting a great deal on a high-quality ring. I'm not sure at this point. I plan to confront him when he gets back from work in a couple hours. The ring itself. The response to this is just absolutely insane. Sorry, I'm having a hard time keeping up with responses. A few of y'all want to see the ring, so here it is if you want to look it up. I'm still waiting for him to get home. Seller, LVZ Gem. 1 CT moissanite ring, women's wedding band suitable for banquet party official occasion, holiday Valentine's Day proposal. Engagement wedding gift anniversary. Gift birthday gift with certificate. I guess it technically is moissanite? Update post. After reading responses from my first post on the AITA subreddit, it got taken down. I was freaking out a bit. He came home while I was FaceTiming a friend about this. I hung up with her and then talked to him for an hour or so. He apologized for sleeping on the couch and that he needed time to think. He doesn't see eye to eye with me on my concerns about the ring and says he did research and that it was highly rated. He says if the ring breaks he will replace it, but didn't say it'd be higher quality. I have people messaging me that the ring could be harmful to my health and that Temu has horrible standards for their jewelry and labor issues, so now I really don't want to wear it. He left and went to his brother's house. Usually I'd go with him, but things are just tense. AITA for telling him I still don't want it. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. Kind of tough, because had you not found out it was from Temu, would you be upset? OOP. TBH. If I hadn't found out it was from Temu, I probably wouldn't be upset. But when it inevitably breaks or tarnishes, the truth would come out. Now that I know, it has completely changed how I feel about the ring, even if it aesthetically doesn't look too bad. Commenter. Did this come as a shock, or is he normally cheap and thoughtless? OOP. He's not normally cheap or thoughtless. He's genuinely a great guy, which is making this harder to navigate. He started making me feel really guilty and materialistic today when we talked about this, and I can see his point of view, but I'm just confused. It feels like Temu is at the bottom of the barrel. I'd be happy with a cheap, decent quality ring from Etsy or anywhere else. I don't really care about the price itself, it's more about the quality and feeling like he doesn't really value me the way I thought he did. OOP addresses several commenters asking if he thinks she is a gold digger. This was her most comprehensive response. I want to clear up these gold digger rumors because this isn't only about the cost of the ring. I only mention these things for context, not because I feel he owes me something in return. When I met him, I was making just over $100K, and he was working part-time and doing an internship bringing in significantly less than me. He totaled his car early on in our relationship, and I happily drove him to his work every morning on the way to my work when he didn't have a car. When his mom got sick and went on hospice, I immediately canceled all of my travel plans and holiday plans with my family and sat with him visiting her every day for months. I helped with funeral arrangements. I helped plan his brother's wedding. I even loaned him money for a new car once he started his new job. He did pay me back BTW. He moved in with me recently and most everything in the home is mine that I paid for prior to the relationship, furniture, etc. I have paid for so many plane tickets for our travels, concert tickets, etc. that I've never asked him to pay back and never will. That's what a relationship is. I genuinely care for him. He has done similar gestures for me and is more than willing to spend money on dates. Believe it or not, I'm not this greedy woman sitting here excited to get his money. I have my own. Have they ever been ring shopping? We never went ring shopping. The proposal was a surprise to me. We'd casually discussed getting married in the future for the past year or so, but he never asked about my taste in rings, so I was kinda thinking that it happened before the engagement. I actually like the style of the ring, but now that I know it's from Temu, I can't look at it the same way. Mini update. I'm literally just sitting here refreshing your comments trying to figure out what to do next. He texted to let me know the plans of staying at his brother's for the weekend and is taking Friday off. It's not crazy abnormal since he's been watching football over there, but I feel like he's avoiding me now. I'm trying not to be pushy about the situation and I'll give him some space, but now I'm just in my head about all of it and regretting my initial reaction. It's just a dumb ring and maybe I've read into it too much. The only other time we've had an argument like this, it was resolved within a couple hours, so I'm not used to this behavior from him. Update 2. Update. He came home this morning while I was in a WFH meeting. These comments made my head spin all night. I got like 3 hours of sleep, so I admit I may be in the wrong for bringing up his finances, but I did. The gold digger rumors. When we met I was making more than him and often paying for his things. His high-paying job is a recent development. I have my own money and don't need it. I asked him what was going on, if there was anything he needed to tell me, if he was testing me by doing this. Well, that really set him off. What kind of person do you think I am? You think I'm a cheapskate, a liar? You obviously think really poorly of me. But still he never gave me a reason. So I asked why he was deflecting every question to victimize himself and to avoid my questions. He tried to leave again. So I tried de-escalating and told him I see where he's coming from, but I need to know if he still loves me. He was immediately apologetic and still wants to get married. He said I can just pick my ring out and buy it with my own money. He said he's sick of talking about this and it's water under the bridge now. He's acting like his normal self again since this convo. I hear him out there skipping around and humming to himself all happily and it's actually pissing me off. Maybe I'm being dramatic, but I don't think I can handle a marriage with someone like this. Fiancé took our dog for a walk while I was getting ready for dinner and it led to a heated argument. Am I the asshole? Original post. It feels ridiculous to ask about this, but I'm starting to think I'm missing some key bit of information here. I guess I'm asking that if I am, why? Because it wasn't my intention, and I certainly would like to prevent it from happening again. This Friday my wife and I had reservations at her favorite restaurant, because her birthday is right around the corner. We had a party planned, but this was supposed to be our night together alone. The way the reservation was set up, I would come home from work, change and immediately drive there as it's around an hour and a half by car. Yes, we live in hick country, yes I am a hick, and no we aren't moving that I've been made aware of, lol. The day had gone great so far, and from what I knew everything was going according to plan. I got home, and she's behind schedule getting ready. This is not something that happens for her ever, and I was surprised, but the reason wasn't her fault, and it was barely a 20-minute deviation. However, I was just waiting by the door during that time and the dog decided he needed out, so I took him for a walk around our yard. It took maybe 5 minutes, and I cleaned everything up and had him put up before my wife was ready. We made it to the dinner reservation by the skin of our teeth, and that was that. We had a great date and I would have never known she was upset with me until the next morning, when she said that she had never known me to be so impatient. Which confused me, and she rolled her eyes and said she noticed that I took the dog for a walk before we left to make her hurry, and that she just didn't want to let my bad mood ruin the night. I had been in a great mood, and told her so, but she refused to believe it, and got pretty angry, which I haven't been able to calm her down from to even talk about all this again. I really don't understand what I've done wrong here, and I don't know what to do. AITA? OP's comments. Commenter, NTA, it sounds like she may really be annoyed about something else. Try talking again to see if you can get under the real issue. Did something happen at work or did she have another expectation that was not met? OP, not that she talked about. The day went pretty well from what I know, but I'll definitely try to talk to her about her job. She hasn't had any trouble from this lot yet that I know of, but it is a newer job, and there may be things I don't know. Thank you, I probably wouldn't have ever connected that it could be related to work. Commenter, NTA. Can you lay it out clearly for your wife that you don't understand what went wrong? Hell, maybe just show her this post. I'm assuming the anger is out of character for her, so a conversation is a good idea. OP. Yeah, neither of us are angry people. That's the biggest reason I posted. She's been pretty annoyed with me before, but this is different. Commenter. Yeah, that's very odd then. There might be some other stuff brewing under the surface, or she was just really tired that day. OP. Someone mentioned work stuff and I'm gonna ask about that. She did start a new job not too long ago, and even though she hasn't said anything to me yet, it's new enough that I wouldn't know yet. Commenter. I am not seeing anything that you did wrong here. Do you know why she was 20 minutes late getting dressed? Maybe the reason she was late getting ready is tied to what made her get upset. Taking the dog out was not wrong. It isn't like you walked around the block. You stayed in your own yard. OP. Yeah, she had gotten ready at our neighbor and her friend's house up a small hill, and walked back over, but took a tumble on the way. She wasn't hurt at all, but she had to change her dress and fix her hair. Not the first time she's fallen like that, and I worry about it. But she says it isn't a big deal. Commenter. My dad used to do this action every time we went out. This is his silent way of telling us, hurry up, don't make me wait. Maybe someone did this to your wife in the past, so she got irritated when you did it. Oh, oop. Huh, yeah. She's never said anything about that, but I can see how that would have ticked her off in that case. Thank you so much for the advice. And I should edit that thanks into the post. Less than 20 comments and almost every one of them have brought up something I didn't think of. Commenter. NTA. Maybe she has an undiagnosed UTI or she's unaware that she's pregnant and hormonal. If this is not normal, then those are the first two medical options. After that she has built up resentment over something or this is a trigger from her childhood. OOP. UTI? Those are pretty dangerous. I think that's what put my mom in the hospital last time. Do you think that's really a possibility? Update post. Hello. I feel weird updating, but I have good news and want to share somewhere. And here seems as good a place as any right now. And actually, I wanted to thank everyone for commenting, and the people who reached out privately with advice. You really helped me calm down, and figure out how to approach talking about this while seeing where my wife could have been coming from. One person even called exactly what was going on, something I dismissed right away, stupidly. So I came home the next day and brought home pizza from her favorite spot in town, which we never get because of crowds, because I figured even if I wasn't outright wrong, there was no reason not to make the conversation nice. So after dinner, I asked about the dog again, and after a lot of back and forth and crying that I'll skip explaining, she explained that for the past week or so she had been feeling weirdly emotional, and she couldn't explain it. Some people had mentioned some things here about different health stuff that could cause those sorts of symptoms, and I got pretty nervous and got her in at her doctor's office within a couple of days. Well, imagine our embarrassment walking out 5 minutes after getting in and doing a test we could have done at home, for like $20, without including insurance companies. She is going to talk to her therapist about meeting every week for a while she deals with hormonal changes. We've been laughing about it now because it never crossed our minds she could have been pregnant. Someone commented on it, but I still didn't believe it, because I am dumb. Never mind that we're both in our 20s or that she switched birth control like 2 months ago, and we may or may not have had unprotected sex during the switch week. Anyway, as stupid as we may be, we are still excited but waiting until the 12-week mark to tell our families. However, I've been itching to tell someone and can't wait any longer. So here's an update. Haha. Wife approved, because it's anonymous. Thanks again for the help. I appreciate it a lot, even if I didn't take the advice of the person who was right. Comment. Commenter. Congrats. And maybe still have that talk with your neighbor about the path to make sure she stays safe. OOP, already working on it. The neighbor isn't against the idea, just against paying for it, haha. Which is no problem for me, since I'm the only one complaining. $10K and boyfriend wanted a car, but after a big fight, I spent it all. Now he's angrier than ever, and I don't know how to confess. Original post. He's a full-time student who works part-time in the summer. I have a full-time and part-time job. He studies a lot. We live together and mostly live off my pay while he stretches what he makes in the summer. Neither of us have ever owned a car because it isn't necessary where we live. We both walk or take the public everywhere to save money. In the morning we stop at a corner shop shortly before splitting up for the day. He buys cigarettes and coffee. I buy fruit for my lunch and, on the weekends, lotto tickets. He always makes fun of me for paying the stupid tax. But I figure my indulgence is cheaper and doesn't come with lung cancer. Sometimes I jokingly tell him not to expect a penny when I win. The day I won he answered me with fine, keep it all. It's not like I'm crying over a penny of nothing over here. I showed him I'd won. He stared for a bit and then dismissively told me I'd probably spent more than that on tickets. In response, I asked what I should blow his half on for myself. I was honestly joking at the time, but he suddenly became angrier than I've ever seen him, and I didn't want to admit I'd been kidding because he was so pissed off it pissed me off. He wants a car, and I don't. He keeps trying to steamroller me, so I'm refusing to share the money. In honesty, I'm willing to spend or save the money for us, but I don't want a car. I won't use a car, and it will keep costing us money in parking and maintenance. After weeks of him sulking and lecturing me about his entitlement to the money, he took me to a car lot and tried to embarrass me into going along with him in front of a salesman. I threw a tantrum after we left without buying anything, and I went to my mom's and paid our rent up to the end of the year and donated the rest to charity. He doesn't know. I fucked up and don't know how to come clean. Teal doctor, I haven't told my boyfriend I spent the money I won because I was upset he was being a dick. He's already angry at me. What should I do? Top comments. Comment 1. I fucked up and don't know how to come clean. I don't think you fucked up at all. Comment 2. Me neither. You spent your money buying the tickets, it's technically you're winning money. It's not like you're married, that'd be a little different. He's just mad that he didn't support your buying the tickets in the first place, so now he looks entitled. I think you spent the money very wisely. Plus now he doesn't have to worry about rent. He better not complain. Comment 3. Agree. The only way this would be a fuck up is if OP has a tax bill coming due to the winning with no funds, anymore, to pay it. OP. No. I rounded down to $10,000 because I was counting after tax and a celebratory dinner. Comment 4. All in all, OP, you sound like a very level-headed person. Your boyfriend, on the other hand, sounds like a huge jerk. Why are you with someone who treats you like that? Comment 5. You paid up rent for both of you, or just yourself? OP. It's my place from before dating him. I never ask him for rent because it cost me the same either way. Comment 6. Just to be clear, he's living rent-free and you share finances, meaning you pay for everything unless his part-time job gives him enough hours. And he's demanding more money from you? Comment 7. I think you should seriously consider everyone's responses. Your boyfriend does not sound like he's respectful or appreciative of the effort you put into your relationship. That said, do you mean that your dad gave you money when you turned 18 so you could get yourself out of an abusive situation if you had to? Because that's the first I've heard of a parent doing that, but it's seriously an awesome idea. I know a few women who keep saving specifically because they want to have insurance in case of a bad situation, but never a parent initiates that sort of savings. If I ever have children, I'm totally stealing that idea. OOP, yeah, my dad sat me down and gave me the grown-up talk about verbal and physical abuse and consent. How to recognize it, what to do, how not to be abusive. Then he gave me the money and explained how to use it. He did this for all his kids, boy or girl. Update. Long story short, a couple months before I won, my boyfriend had secretly dropped out of school to join a Christian rock band, he's not Christian, and began to cover his new coke habit, which explains so much. He took me winning as a sign they were about to make it and should go on tour. That's why he wanted the car so damn much. Obviously we had a huge fight. I sacrificed a lot because he told me he'd never be happy without that degree, and he threw it away to play rockstar while I ground myself down at dead-end jobs. I told him I agreed to support him through one dream, and if he was done with it I was going after my dreams now. He made all kinds of promises to me about how he'll take care of me when he gets famous, but I told him the only promises I cared about were the ones he made when I agreed to help him through school. He broke up with me until I came to your senses. As far as I'm concerned, that's already happened, so I had his brother pick up his stuff. He tried to cause problems with me illegally evicting him, but I reminded him I had some text conversations where he said, "Your apartment is your problem," and, "I don't live there anymore, so deal with it." I have no idea if that's legally enforceable, but neither does he. My lease is up in 3 months and I won't have to worry about it after that. It's been really rough accepting he's not the guy I fell in love with anymore, but the way he's been acting has made it a lot easier. I'm mostly angry I sunk so much of my time and money and compromised my future for him. But I guess it's better I found out now instead of later. I got tested in case he cheated or was doing other drugs, and so far so good. I'm also 9,000% sure my ex staged the 3 break-ins we had in our apartment after one of his friends told me around that time my then BF was trying to sell my prescriptions and his laptop, that I ended up replacing FFS, that were supposedly stolen. I told the cops and his friend agreed to make a statement, but IDK what's happening with that yet. Other than that, I'm happy to report I'm only working one job now that's actually something I want to do and pays way more. My apartment is much nicer without his junk, and now the toilet is never unflushed and the seat is always down, so I've got that going for me too. With all my free time I've rescued a kitty and I'm learning to knit. I was planning on becoming an old cat lady, but I also went on my second first date ever. It was with another woman, which was kind of a surprise but also somehow not. We've got a second date planned and I'm incredibly giddy with anticipation, which is really nice. Oh, and I told my dad how much you liked his dump him fun consent conversation, and he said his grandma gave him one when he decided to get married at 18, not my mom, so he can't take credit for the idea. Edit. Thanks for all the well wishes everyone. TL.dr, boyfriend dumped me, can't complain. Top comments. Comment 1. Sorry he turned out to be such a heel. Getting dumped is never fun, but a bullet was definitely dodged here. My apartment is much nicer without his junk, and now the toilet is never unflushed and the seat is always down, so I've got that going for me. Which is nice. Comment 2. Being dumped is never fun, but I think in OP's case, it's the best thing that could have happened to her, lol. And can't forget, with all my free time I've rescued a kitty, yay to rescue animals. Comment 3, entitled a coke addict, a thief, etc. etc. What a complete pile of human garbage. Congratulations on getting rid of him. Enjoy doing you, OP. Comment 4, LOL, and wanted to be in a Christian rock band, hilarious when you consider all of those factors together. Comment 5, the toilet is never unflushed. The fuck? Did he not flush? Oh, OP, not usually, which made it so much more lovelier that time I forgot to check the seat and fell in. Comment 6. Yay kitty cat. Also, while this all really sucked for you to live through, I am sure that it will be the most delightful of anecdotes. Dropped out of school to join a Christian rock band is just about the dumbest life plan I can think of, especially given the general state of the music industry as a whole and of Christian rock in particular. OOP. It's very unlike him. I thought he was messing with me until he showed me the videos. Not good. IDK, if coke explains all of what's going on, there may be other drugs I don't know about. He's not the same as when we met, I know that much. I posted an update to RR's relationships after asking for advice, and someone recommended I make sure I can't get in legal trouble over the situation. I live in CA and have had my apartment for 4 years. My ex lived with me for 3 years. He never paid rent or was on the lease. My landlord knew he was there and he got mail there. My lease is up in 3 months and I'm planning on moving. He left willingly, and when I texted him about some damage he'd done to the building that he'd promised our landlord he'd fix, he sent me 2 texts that I kept copies of saying, "Your apartment is your problem and I don't live there anymore, so deal with it." He sent his brother to my place to pick up some music equipment, and I had his brother take all his stuff with him. My ex texted me angrily about how I couldn't just illegally evict him, but backed off when I sent him screenshots of the texts. Also, the police are currently investigating him for 3 break-ins to my apartment when he lived there, based on one of his friends making a statement that he tried to sell him my prescriptions and his laptop around that time. I don't know if that's relevant. Could he cause me any legal problems? I, 29M. Think that my girlfriend, 26F, is only with me because she can't be with her best friend, 26M. Should I just end the relationship? Sorry for the long post. I didn't realize how much I had to say until I got it all typed out. Thanks in advance to anyone who reads all this. I've been with my girlfriend Jordan for a little over 2 years, we live together and we have 2 cats. Up until this weekend I genuinely thought everything was perfect in our relationship, which I know is what everyone says in these posts, but I really was thinking that I was going to ask her to marry me sometime in the next year. We don't ever get into arguments. Jordan is very sweet and easygoing, and normally we just mesh well on everything. Honestly, if everything in our relationship hadn't been so good up until now, I probably would have just broken up with her this weekend. But because things have truly been so perfect, I'm not sure if maybe I'm jumping to the wrong conclusion about what to do because my feelings got hurt. The other person who's important in this story is Jordan's friend Mark. She's known Mark for their whole lives because they both grew up in the same small religious community. Jordan isn't part of that religion anymore. She decided to leave the church when she was, I think, 19 and moved to the state that we live in now. Mark still is in the religion and apparently takes it really seriously. I'm told he now works for the church back in Jordan's hometown. Also, as far as I know, Mark is the only person from the religious community that Jordan still talks to besides her parents, which I'm mentioning because I now think it could be a red flag. So on Saturday I met Mark for the first time because he was in our city and Jordan wanted us all to have dinner together. At this point I want to say, I will admit that when we were first dating, I found out that Jordan had a best friend who was a guy I didn't really like, especially because it seemed like they were on FaceTime with each other a lot. But since it was a childhood friend and they mostly didn't see each other in person, I just trusted Jordan that Mark was only a friend and didn't let it bother me, and eventually I got over it. So when we were going to dinner, I wasn't jealous or suspicious of Mark at all. If anything, I was somewhat excited to finally be meeting him since I've been hearing about him for 2 years. But then the way Jordan and Mark acted at dinner is what convinced me that there's something going on there other than just being best friends. I honestly don't even know how to describe it except to say that I've never seen two people act more obviously like they were in love with each other. They literally would not stop touching each other. They were constantly touching each other's arms and shoulders, and at some points they were actually even holding hands. They completely left me out of the conversation and were laughing about inside jokes, and every time they'd laugh they'd do this thing where they put their foreheads together, or that was when they'd be holding hands. And then also they were just looking at each other in a way that I didn't feel comfortable with at all. It was honestly even worse than the touching. It just wasn't how anyone would look at somebody they're supposedly just friends with. I'm 100% sure that every stranger looking at our table thought that Jordan and Mark were the couple and that I was her brother or something. I felt like a third wheel the whole time, and Jordan didn't even notice how awkward she was making it for me because she was way too focused on Mark and all the attention she was getting from him. And that's really not like Jordan at all. Usually she's a lot more considerate and would notice immediately if I wasn't having a good time or if she was accidentally being rude and excluding someone at the table. So it was genuinely really jarring to be sitting there with her and Mark and basically feeling like I didn't know my girlfriend at all. It was like he turned her into a completely different person who didn't even care that I was alive. So finally, at one point when Jordan got up to go to the bathroom, I just said to Mark, "So are you into my girl or what's going on here?" Mark: "Nothing's going on at all. That ship sailed a long time ago." Me: "What does that mean? Did you guys date at some point?" Mark: "No, we never did. And then when she left the church, we both knew it meant that we were never going to. And we've accepted being in each other's lives as friends. There's nothing else going on at all." Me: "That makes it sound like the only reason you're not together is because she left the church." And all Mark did was shrug. Me: "Well, what if she came back to the church? Would you marry her?" Mark: "Oh, she's not going to do that. You might as well ask what would happen if a bicycle had 6 tires." And so then when Jordan came back to the table, Mark said to her, "OP wants to know if we'd be married if you weren't a godless heathen." Jordan: "Why did you two call your mom while I was gone?" And then she and Mark both just laughed about it and changed the subject. So because of dinner and that conversation and everything else that I've written about in this post, I really feel like Jordan and Mark are in love with each other and not just best friends like they say. And the only reason they aren't together is because they can't compromise about their religion. I think Jordan thinks that because she's okay with that decision, she expects me to be okay with being her second choice, and in the meantime she's actually secretly wanting to be with Mark. So that makes me think that I should probably obviously just have self-respect and break up with her, because I shouldn't be in a relationship with someone who would rather be with somebody else. But then the problem for me is that our relationship has been so perfect and Jordan has always treated me so well except for this one night. The only time she's ever acted like this was on the one occasion that Mark was around in person. Normally, even when she's talking to him all the time, she's never made me feel this way. So on the one hand, I'm wondering if maybe it doesn't matter what Jordan's feelings are for Mark. As long as he isn't going to be around, it doesn't actually seem to affect our relationship. So maybe I just need to cool off and go back to trusting her that they are indeed only friends, even if it seems to be true that they have complicated feelings for each other. Or should I just end things? Relevant comments. Or Michalski: "What did Jordan say about all this when you two got home and had a private discussion?" "We didn't talk about it again. I've just been trying to weigh things out on my own for the last few days. I wasn't sure how I should try to talk to her about it or if that was the best idea." In reply: "Cap does it. I mean, the only way forward at this point is to talk to your girlfriend. You need to sit down with her and have a frank discussion about the events of the night and what made you uncomfortable. How she responds to your concerns will tell you almost everything you need to know. The main thing I would be concerned about when starting the conversation is that your girlfriend seems like she might be quick to brush off any of your concerns without hearing them out. If she does that, you need to push back. Make it clear that you need to be heard on this issue and that she needs to take you seriously here. Then really, you just need to first of all tell her that you found a lot of her actions with Jordan to be not only inappropriate but hurtful to you. Establish boundaries as well. Be explicit, the hand-holding, pressing their foreheads up against one another, etc. All goes far beyond what best friends do with each other. I think your best bet is to mostly frame the conversation around that. What you do from there really depends on how your girlfriend reacts to that. I can see it going one of two ways. This would be the ideal situation, but maybe she genuinely did not realize what she was doing in that environment. She was in a weird church cult for what seems like a decent chunk of her life. It's possible that she sees that behavior as normal and not at all concerning. That doesn't excuse the behavior, but it could go a long way to alleviate your concerns. She goes on the defensive and claims you are exaggerating what happened. You're just being jealous. That's just how their relationship is. I'd say that if she immediately responds with being defensive, then that tells you more or less all you need to know. Either way though, you need to talk to her and she needs to understand that her actions were inappropriate. It might be tempting to sweep it under the rug if she tries to laugh it off. After all, how often are you really going to be interacting with this Mark * person anyway? But if you're really considering a long-term thing with this girl, you need to think in the long term. Say you do get married to this girl, you really want to fully commit yourself to someone who you believe would drop you for someone else in a heartbeat. Thanks for this comment. This gives me a lot of good stuff to think about. A couple of people have mentioned that her behavior around Mark might have a different context than I thought because of how they grew up. Not that that means I should let it go and not tell her that it bothered me, but that maybe she didn't realize that it doesn't seem normal and maybe it's not as much as a sign of something as I thought. So I might start by just bringing up to her, I think that could be a good idea. There are comments on how inappropriate GF's behavior was. Ali_cat 222. I may get some hate for this, but I am a F whose best friend is a guy and I don't even do more than give him a quick hug before we part after hanging out. That may just be me, but I couldn't imagine holding hands and touching foreheads together, especially if my SO was there if I had one. How does growing up with someone equate to needing to hold hands, touching forearms, etc.? To me that comes off as disrespectful. Now having said that though, I do believe the best thing to do is talk to her. Ignoring it won't get you anywhere. And I will admit that the way I may view things doesn't mean that's the way she viewed it, nor necessarily was trying to be flirtatious either. The only way to work through things in a relationship is letting your partner know how you feel in situations. If you don't discuss things that you may be feeling uncomfortable with, you won't have a good continual foundation for your relationship otherwise. I wish you all the best and hope you can work things out. Rezua R. Touching foreheads and holding hands? I mean, the rest of it is over the line but maybe excusable in some way. But this? I don't know how you didn't say something when it happened. It just seems so bizarre to me for friends to do that. There has to be something more. It just doesn't make any sense otherwise, no matter how you try and view it. Maybe they think of each other as the one that got away. Maybe some kind of tragedy. Romeo and Juliet. Right person, wrong circumstances kind of thing. What I really think is that at the least, this will happen every time Mark makes an appearance in your lives. And at worst you'll always be second to him, whether he's there or not. Aliando Elise. My jaw dropped when I read that, for real. Nora Ray J. Same, I could not imagine being OP at that moment. It would make me cry if my partner did that to me. Sidri. She obviously carries a torch that will never go out. If knowing your runner-up is something you can live with, give it a shot. But 2 years isn't long and there's a lot of years left. If something changes later and an opportunity opens up, she'd go running. If something changes later and an opportunity opens up, she'd go running. That's the big thing that scares me, because I do think that I could maybe live with the fact that there was someone else before me and that she eventually did choose me over him. But then I think about what could happen if Mark decided that he was ever going to leave the church like Jordan did. Which doesn't seem like it's going to happen from the way they both talk about it, but then I know that I'm a different person now at 29 than I was when I was 26, so it's not impossible for him to change his mind. And then if that really was the only reason that Jordan was with me, of course she'd leave to go be with him like what she always wanted. First update. 2 days later. I talked to Jordan on Wednesday night. The TLDR update to the situation is that I didn't break up with her. After we talked about everything, I feel like that would be too much of an overreaction for what's actually going on. I do still think I was right to be upset about what I saw happening at dinner on Saturday, and Jordan didn't disagree with me about that. But I think I did jump to the wrong conclusion that it meant that she secretly actually wanted to be with Mark more than she wanted to be with me. Now that we've talked it out, I don't think there's a reason to end what's otherwise the best relationship I've ever had, and I'm glad that I didn't just immediately trust my instincts because there was more going on with the situation that I didn't really understand that Jordan has since told me, and now I do feel like she can be given some grace in this situation, assuming nothing like this ever happens again. So thanks for the advice, especially for everyone who told me to just talk to her before I made a big decision. So when we talked, I decided to take the main piece of advice that I got from everyone and start by telling Jordan that my feelings were hurt by the way she treated me at dinner with Mark, and then see how the conversation went from there. It turned into a very long talk, so I don't want to try to remember exact quotes and get them wrong, but here are the important things. I repeated to Jordan some of what I wrote in the post and said that I felt excluded by her and Mark, especially because they were being overly touchy-feely with each other to the point where it made me uncomfortable. Jordan seemed surprised, like she didn't even notice that she and Mark were touching each other that much, but then she thought about it and said that I was right and apologized. She said that Mark is always really touchy with everybody and not just her, I asked, and so she didn't even think about it, but that she wished I would have said something at the time because she didn't realize they were being that obnoxious. I said that was part of what bothered me, because I thought that normally she would have noticed something like that, but she was acting so different around Mark and not paying any attention to anything else, including how I was feeling, that it was honestly just made me question which one of us she cared about more, or if she cared about him as more than just a friend. Jordan apologized more and said that she could understand why it would look that way to me, but that she loves me and cares more about me than anyone else in the world, and that she didn't mean to act like that or make me feel that way. She said that she was trying to not make Mark feel like a third wheel because of being a single guy out with a couple, but obviously it backfired and just made me feel like the third wheel instead, which wasn't what she wanted to do either. After that, Jordan explained a lot to me about her history with Mark, and basically as she explained it, she said that she fully admits she cares about him as more than just a normal friend, but she says that it's not in a romantic way. She said that's why she always specifically refers to him as her best friend, and not just as her friend, and said that she would use the phrase "he's like my brother" if it weren't for the fact that she once had an actual brother, RIP, so she won't use that phrasing for anyone else. According to Jordan, the main thing that happened to make her and Mark so close was that when she was 17 she tried to kill herself. And that was actually when everyone else in the community stopped talking to her and Mark was the only person who didn't. For the next couple of years until she moved, he was literally her only friend, and she said that he checked on her every single day to make sure she stayed alive, which is also when they got into the habit of talking on the phone so much. And also apparently during this time Mark's parents thought they were dating and made a big deal about how they shouldn't be, and that's why she made that remark during dinner. Apparently calling Jordan a godless heathen is something that Mark's mom said. I did tell Jordan that Mark basically said to me that he thought the two of them would be married if she had stayed in the church, and I asked her if she thinks that maybe Mark is in love with her even if she doesn't feel the same way. She said definitely not, and I don't think she was being dishonest. I really don't agree with her, but I think she genuinely believes that Mark isn't into her in any way apart from friendship. Her opinion of the situation is that she also thinks she and Mark would eventually have gotten married if she had never left the church or moved. But from her perspective it would have been more because of peer pressure than anything else, and she doesn't think it would necessarily have been a good thing. She thinks Mark was just being honest about that, and that possibly from his perspective he thinks he and Jordan would have made a good couple, but he's probably thinking that because he's just assuming that in that scenario she'd be the perfect church wife, so there's no reason why they wouldn't be a good couple. But then the big thing that happened at the end of the conversation is that Jordan told me that Mark is coming back through our city on his way home from this trip. And so she was going to invite him to hang out with the two of us again, but she said that if I'm going to be uncomfortable with him around then she won't ask him. A lot of people were saying that if she didn't offer to cut contact with him or to cut down on contact with him, it meant that she valued him over me, so the fact that she brought up on her own that she wouldn't invite him to dinner with us again because I didn't like it seemed like a really good sign to me. Based on everything else that she said, I do understand why she didn't offer to totally stop being friends with him, and I wouldn't expect her to after what she told me about what happened when she was a teenager. So now I'm deciding to take Jordan's word for it that although she and Mark are weirdly close, it's for the reasons that she explained to me and not because she's in love with him. I think the fact that she was immediately apologetic instead of defensive was good, and the way she explained everything did make sense to me. I don't necessarily trust Mark, but I do think I can trust Jordan. But I am going to watch and see if it seems like she's still talking to him as much as she used to, or if anything changes or sounds different. I'm not going to be controlling and tell her that she can't talk to him or that she has to talk to him less, but I want to see if me talking to her about all of this causes her to act any differently at all. I'm kind of thinking she might realize on her own that the way Mark acts towards her actually does seem like he likes her more than a friend now that I've brought it up, but I don't know. It could be that things just go back to exactly the way they were before and I won't know if anything has actually changed until the next time Mark is around in person, but I don't think that's something I should keep worrying about before it happens. Relevant comments signal_blackberry 326. Holding hands with your opposite sex friend and pushing your foreheads together in front of your monogamous partner is wild, but you do you, homie. Tamerlane_Tully. Well, Reddit, congratulations, we definitely accomplished nothing here. There's some sober pushback in the comments. OOP mostly stands his ground. Pixel_Spartan 117. OP, did she acknowledge that the touching by her was inappropriate? I do not see how she could not have recognized how touchy they were and her lack of physical touch with you. Like many others have said, I am not sure Jordan was being completely honest with you. Did you ask her how she would have felt in a reverse situation? If the three of you meet again, you might want to think about excusing yourself to go to the bathroom or something during the meal and instead hide and film their interaction while you are gone. See if Jordan changes how she interacts when you are not there. I say to capture it on your phone because then you have it to show her if you break up. If she interacts appropriately while you are gone, then she may have gotten the message. She should also start limiting her interactions with him, phone text, because that relationship is not healthy and no SO should have to deal with that if you two get married. It needs to be dealt with now. She did acknowledge that all the touching was inappropriate, yes. When she actually thought back on how much they were doing it and how over the top it was, she was embarrassed and realized she shouldn't have started acting like that just because Mark makes it seem normal. I didn't ask her how she'd feel in the reverse situation because it seemed like she got it immediately as soon as I told her how it made me feel. Unleashed 99. I am glad you spoke up and I am glad you received some clarity on the situation. Unfortunately, I think your girlfriend is lying. The problem is that she is not really lying to you. I mean, she is, but really she's lying to herself. If she is talking to this guy every day and not even realizing how physical she got with him when they met up after being physically separated for so long. She has been lying to herself for so long that the lies to you were just shrapnel from the nuclear lies she keeps telling herself. Obviously, they aren't a compatible couple long term with their core beliefs being so different, but they have fed their emotional bond for so long that their connection is intense. Dude, she didn't even realize she was physically wrapped into this man with her long-term boyfriend right next to her. That speaks volumes. I have been coaching individuals in the infidelity realm long enough to have seen this same story play out 1,000 times now. I pray I am wrong for your sake, OP. But I fear if she doesn't entirely cut off Mark, you'll be either here or in R surviving infidelity in the next 2 years with a shocked Pikachu face on saying, just found out my fiancé has been cheating with her best friend Mark. I say that and I know it comes out a little snarky, but in all honesty my heart breaks saying it. Having been through betrayal like that personally, I'd gladly sacrifice many things in my own life to help prevent others from experiencing that same pain. So even if you believe your girlfriend, hold on to a shred of doubt and wonder if the experts might have some wisdom to offer your situation. As I saw someone else mention, the book Not Just Friends by Shirley Glass would be amazingly on point for your situation and might lead you towards some growth here. No matter what you choose, I pray you find peace and joy. Good luck. If the three of us are ever together again, I'll definitely be watching everything, but I don't think there's a chance of that happening for a while. I can admit there's a possibility that Jordan is just wrong about how she feels. After our talk, I do honestly think that's more likely than that she's trying to be dishonest or is gaslighting me. If that turns out to be the case, then that's going to have to be the end of the relationship, but I'm deciding to at least give her a chance here. Specific bag, 7401. A lot of what you detail still sounds weird. Especially the part where she didn't want to make Mark feel left out because he was visiting with a couple, him being a single man. Mark in no way visited with a couple. If Jordan is so empathetic re this issue, she sure missed showing any empathy for you. I don't think you will experience much difference with the next encounter with all three of you. You're very enthusiastic to give Jordan a pass. This will continue to haunt you. You don't seem to think you deserve to have this made right. Jordan has a very wide berth. I wish you the best. You just seem to feel you deserve so little. It's so sad. I do agree with you that it still sounds weird, but with more context I'm just more comfortable with it. Don't get me wrong, I still didn't appreciate being treated like a third wheel at dinner, and I still thought that Mark and Jordan were too handsy with each other just in general, and I'm not okay with that continuing. But if she's being honest with me that it's not because of romantic feelings, which I think she is, then I think as long as she's willing to have boundaries from now on after understanding that it made me uncomfortable, I don't think it's as much of a red flag as I thought before. In a lengthy comment, OOP is asked to consider whether it's not a matter of Jordan believable but that he wants to believe her so strongly that he is subconsciously subverting his standards for judgment. That's a really well thought out comment and I appreciate you taking the time to write it. And I absolutely do understand why everyone thinks I'm just letting Jordan gaslight me. Honestly, I'd probably think the same thing if someone else was telling me this story, so I can't really blame everyone. But I truly don't think I'm just being steered by wanting to believe her. It's hard to convey everything that happened when we talked into one post, but I'm just very sure that she was being genuine, and it was that convinced me that I could believe that she was saying, it wasn't that I just stopped being objective because that was the easier thing to do. Honestly, I think it would have been easier to keep assuming that what I thought in the first place was true because honestly it's easier for me to understand. I do think that Jordan's attachment to Mark is weird and probably unhealthy, and even if she doesn't think so, I think there's more than just friendship going on from his side of things. But I think Jordan is being honest that she's not in love with him and that she wants to be with me and not him, and that was the thing that was making me question the relationship. The other stuff that I do still take issue with I think can be worked out as long as Jordan takes seriously that she can't be acting in a way with Mark that disrespects me and our relationship, even if in her head it's not in a romantic way, and from the way our talk went I think I can trust her to do so. Second update, 2.5 months later. I apologize if this isn't right. I've never tried to post to my profile on here before, but a lot of people wanted an update and I don't think I'm allowed to post to the original subreddit. The situation seems pretty resolved now, after Mike and Jordan had an argument over everything and are no longer friends. What happened was that after Jordan told Mark we weren't available to hang out when he came back through our city, he blamed me, saying that he could tell Jordan was only saying no to hanging out because I had a problem with him. Jordan admitted that this was part of the reason and told Mark that she wanted a bit of space from him because she was trying to be respectful of our relationship. Mark got really offended and kept asking Jordan to explain why him being around was disrespectful to our relationship and kept pretending not to understand her answers, and then eventually during the conversation he started trying to guilt Jordan into making time for him and told her that she's become a worse person over the years, because the Jordan he knew would never blow him off. That upset Jordan a lot because she took it as Mark saying that she was a bad person since she left the church, and she started crying and she ended up hanging up on him. Jordan and I talked a lot afterwards. I told her that I thought Mark was toxic because anyone else would have been understanding of what she said. Jordan said that a lot of what he said during the conversation reminded her of being in the church. She said that she couldn't explain it except that it was his attitude when he tried to argue with her, but that it made her not really want to talk to him even outside of anything to do with our relationship. Mark texted Jordan the day after asking if she really wasn't going to come see him and if she was going to pick some boyfriend over her only friend after he's been there for her through everything. Jordan texted Mark back explaining her point again and saying that their friendship couldn't be the same anymore as it used to be now that she was with someone and that he should understand that. Mark texted Jordan that he couldn't believe she'd treat her best friend like that. Jordan tried to text Mark saying that a friend wouldn't be guilty of tripping her, but it turned out that he had blocked her number. After that, Jordan was feeling like she'd done something wrong and was too mean to Mark, but she and I talked about it again and she realized that she was right to not want to be friends with Mark if he's going to treat her like she owes him loyalty. Jordan then blocked him back, including on all her socials, so that if later he changes his mind and tries to apologize, she can ignore him. A couple of weeks went by, and while I'll admit I was pretty happy about not hearing from Mark, Jordan was really bummed about how everything ended. She said that although she saw now that Mark isn't a good person to have in her life because of his reaction to her trying to set a boundary, she still felt sad and abandoned, and it was bringing back a lot of the same feelings as when she was a teenager and her other church friends all turned their backs on her. So at this point I asked her if she's ever thought about going to therapy for religious trauma, and she said she'd gone for a few months when she first left the church, but the therapist wasn't really helpful. I suggested that maybe it would be a good idea to try again with a better therapist because it sounds like all this stuff still bothers her a lot, and Jordan agreed with me and decided to make an appointment. She's had a couple of therapy sessions that she says so far are good, but I don't really ask her for any details on what they talk about, so I can't really update on that part of the situation. Relevant comments. Asiktak. Mark sounds toxic at this point. He sounded iffy before, honestly, with the way he was so positive he would have been with Jordan, but this is not the way you treat someone who is supposed to be a friend. He wants to be her number one friend, then he should try actually being a friend and listening. I assume he isn't because in his religion the man is supposed to speak and the woman is supposed to listen. Yes, tell Jordan to try a different therapist. If the therapist isn't working for her, that just means she has the wrong therapist. She can find a good one and I really hope she does. Agreed. I didn't trust Mark when I thought he was just in love with her, but seeing him be so shitty and demanding really made it clear that he's a POS. Julia Valentine. I've been reading these posts since it first came out and it sucks that it had to turn out this way, but I think it's for the better. Especially the part of her going back to therapy too. Does she have other new friends not related to the church that she can rely on too? Her having her own support system that is separate from you and Mark could also help her. Anyways, wishing you all the best. Jordan seems like a very lovely girl and I'm glad you both are going strong outside of the trauma. Does she have other new friends not related to the church that she can rely on too? She does. We have a few couples that we're pretty close friends with and she also has a bunch of friends from her work who I know she talks to about problems and all that stuff. Family and fiancé pressured me to reconcile with my dad, who left for his new family, but I refuse. Now I'm left feeling isolated. When I was 13, my father had an affair, left my mother and moved in with his affair partner, whom we will call Janet. My sister and I used to see him every weekend, and I have to confess that he was a decent father, but I never liked Janet. When Janet became pregnant and they had a son, our visits became less frequent, and my father became more worried about his new family. He missed some of my performances and my sister's competitions because he was preoccupied with his son. Janet chose to relocate when I was 16 years old in search of a better job. My sister and I begged him not to leave, but Dad simply responded, "I need to prioritize my family." He moved 10 hours away, which effectively destroyed our relationship. I decided to maintain no contact because it was evident he did not consider me family. My younger sister remained in contact with him. He would try to call and invite me to visit my sister, but I refused. When he returned to see my sister, I refused to talk to him when he arrived at the house. I did not invite him to my high school or college graduation. I'm now 33 and have had no touch with him. He has tried to contact me several times over the years, and his family has reached out on his behalf. I've avoided family gatherings in case he attends, such as my sister's wedding and baby showers. My father and his family returned to our hometown 3 months ago, and he has been tireless in his efforts to reconcile. My half-brother and sister have both expressed interest in a relationship with him, stating that he is an excellent father. My father found out I'm getting married and has been attempting to contact me, even speaking with my fiancé. Janet messaged me, stating I had continually broken my father's heart, that I am sad, and that I should get therapy. I reacted, calling her a expletive, and then blocked her. Everyone seems to be urging me to accept him back into my life. I'm weary of being harassed and unintentionally running into my father and his family in town. Whenever I see them, I simply walk away and refuse to speak. People keep telling me he's a decent father who did his best to stay in touch, but I pushed him away. The pressure is immense. My mother, sister, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and even some friends all insist that I reconcile. Even my fiancé has begun to question my decision to exclude him. Update 1. I recently chatted with my fiancé and regrettably things didn't go well. I've had enough and want to run away. My fiancé, whom I will refer to as Larry, is aware of my background with my father and Janet. I stated that his siding with my father and pressing me was harming me, and that as my fiancé, he should be supporting me. Larry informed me that he cannot support me in doing anything that he believes is bad. He said he spoke with my father, heard all sides of the story, and believes we can resolve things if we sit down and chat. I told Larry I didn't want to communicate with my father and asked why he was talking to him. Larry revealed that his father, who is acquainted with my father, pushed him to contact him. He then informed me that my father adores me and has always wanted to be a part of my life. He even has images of me, which I believe he obtained from family because my social media is private. Larry stated that my father is heartbroken over our estrangement and that I was unfair in asking him to move away when I was young. He also claimed that I started off on the wrong foot with Janet and that I was not to blame for the relationship's failure. Finally, he informed me that everyone can see the truth except me, and that I should look in the mirror since I am the problem. Needless to say, I burst out crying and asked him why he was doing this to me and not supporting me. Larry claims to love me, but he won't stand by and let me be a cruel expletive. After he said this, I stood up, told him that he shouldn't marry a cruel expletive, and left. I am currently sitting in my car and my phone is blowing up with Larry attempting to call me, but I do not want to speak with him. I feel as if I'm losing everything and everyone, and I have no idea what's happening. Update 2. I know many of you are encouraging me to break off all contact with my family and leave town, but it is not an option for me financially. I wouldn't be able to start my business somewhere because I've invested all of my money in it and have only recently generated a consistent revenue. Relocating is not viable. I adore my friends and family and don't want to cut them off. I grew up in this town, and I'm not ready to leave. I did not intend to write another report so quickly, but a lot has transpired today. First, I agreed to meet with my father to discuss and persuade him to back off and leave me alone. I requested my mother to arrange it for him and no one else. I wasn't sure he'd agree, but within 15 minutes of her calling, he was at the door. I requested my mother to stay and mediate. To paraphrase the talk, my father is in therapy and invites me to join him for family sessions. He wants me to spend one-on-one time with him, to stop being harsh and mean to his children, and to believe in them. He also demanded that I stop trash-talking Janet and invite him and his family to my wedding, including asking him to walk me down the aisle. I, on the other hand, want him to quit talking to my friends and asking others to speak for him. I want him to keep Janet away from me totally, and I agreed to be courteous at events and around town as long as he does not try to hug or chat to me. My mother reminded him that he was being unrealistic about some of his desires, particularly those involving Janet and his other children. For the time being, we've agreed that I'll attend 3 therapy sessions with him as he schedules them. My mother also believes I require individual therapy. He will cease interfering with my life and relationships, keep Janet away from me and ask his children to give me room. I will be courteous with him in public as long as he respects my personal space and does not approach or press me. I still haven't spoken to my fiancé. He arrived at my mother's house, but she refused to let him inside. He keeps blowing up my phone, as do his family and friends, and telling me to listen to him. During my meeting with my father, I discovered that he had paid for the majority of the vendors and services for my impending wedding, and they have been on speaking terms for far longer than I had anticipated. Larry had told me that his family paid for these items and I believed him. I feel betrayed by him, and I no longer trust him. I know I'll have to talk to him someday, but I don't feel ready yet. Update 3. First and foremost, the contract with my father is off the table. He couldn't even go a week without crossing my limits, thus there will be no therapy sessions with him, and I will maintain no contact. After deciding on a course of action, keeping Janet away from me, asking his kids to back off, and respecting my personal space, it only lasted 3 days. Everyone looked pleased that I had forgiven my father and told me so. My sister was thrilled that I was willing to give him a chance, and under duress, I agreed to have dinner with just her and my father. When my sister and I arrived at the restaurant to meet our father, he wasn't alone. He had invited Janet, my grandparents, his son and daughter. He stood up and attempted to hug me. I immediately grew agitated, wondering why they were there. My father informed me that if we wanted to mend our relationship, I needed to embrace Janet and my younger siblings. I tried to leave after telling him that he had broken our agreement and that he should never contact me again. He wouldn't let me go and took hold of me. When I say all hell broke loose, I really mean it. I began shouting at them, and my father, Janet and grandparents attempted to gaslight me and persuade me to sit down. When that didn't work, things became heated, resulting in a shouting battle. My father and Janet said many horrible things, including comments about my appearance and dubbing me a psychopath. My half-brother left the restaurant and my half-sister began to cry. My sister astonished me by defending me and accusing my father of wrecking things after I had finally given him a chance. She even slapped Janet. My sister took me out of there and apologized to me. I believe this was the first time she had witnessed Janet's interactions with me and how she handled me. She kept repeating she couldn't understand how Dad had spent years professing he would do anything to get me back, only to sabotage the relationship when he finally had the opportunity to re-establish it. My father has tried to contact me, but I have blocked him and refused to speak to him. I also refuse to speak with my grandparents. My father has tried to get my mother and sister to talk with me, but I believe he has burned his bridges with them. The conflict in the restaurant has spread and some people appear to be backing off. As I already stated, what my father and Janet said to me was inexcusable, and because we live in a tiny town, it spread quickly. Hopefully, individuals will back down, and those that continue to support them will be forced out of my life. My sister is very unhappy with my father and Janet and she refuses to speak to them. She blames them for my continued lack of communication. She is not allowing them to see her children either. I'm not sure if my sister will reconcile, but she is furious right now. My mother is also furious, and she appears to have had a few choice words with my father and Janet. She has agreed not to force me again to communicate with him. I'm going to start individual treatment since I believe I really need it. I feel awful for my half-siblings because they have done nothing wrong. I may be willing to have a distant relationship with them in the future, but I'm not ready yet, and I'm not sure I ever will be. I did send them a note on Facebook to apologize and assure them that they had not done anything wrong. Finally, to inform you all on my fiancé. I chatted with him yesterday about everything. I'd been radio silent since walking out on him. Essentially, he was pressured by his father to speak with my father and was offered a sob story about a misunderstood parent who really wanted to be involved in his daughter's life. Larry was unhappy with me for refusing to attend his family functions and for leaving his mother's birthday party when I realized my father and Janet were present. He was under pressure from his family to not disrupt their activities, and all he wanted was for everyone to be happy and get along, clearly at my price. Larry said that my father had paid for some of the wedding suppliers, but he didn't realize it until after the event was over. His father had informed Larry that he and his mother had paid for everything. My father had informed Larry that it was his way of giving. Larry also revealed that my father had instructed him to speak to me on his behalf. I informed Larry that he had abused my confidence and I couldn't imagine marrying someone who didn't support me. He came down in tears and apologized to me, promising never to do it again. Larry was upset and asked for another opportunity. To all of you who expected me to end our relationship, I apologize for disappointing you, but we will try to work things out. Aside from this incident, he has been the ideal partner, and I sincerely believe he was duped by his family and my father. Larry has sworn to stand up to his family and have no contact with my father. I'm still living with my mother because I need space, which I won't have if I move back home. We will contact our wedding vendors next week to discuss our alternatives. Larry begs for a postponement rather than canceling the wedding completely. We may still break up because actions speak louder than words, and I want to see if he can rebuild what we had and demonstrate that I can trust and rely on him. My father has been attempting to reach me, but I've blocked him. Larry has sworn to stand up to his family and have no contact with my father. There's no point in changing my phone number because I've done it before and my father always gets to acquire it again. Larry is open to the possibility of ending their relationship. I'm giving him an opportunity to show me that he means what he says. I always felt I had a good relationship with Larry's family, but I was definitely mistaken. I'm not asking him to have no contact with them, that is up to him, but I will absolutely separate myself from them. Any additional occurrences will result in no contact. If we are still together and have children, I will not trust his family with them. Update 4. I've cancelled the wedding. I was able to receive some returns, but I lost some money. Larry begged me not to cancel the wedding, but I couldn't marry him after what he'd done. I was determined to give him another chance, and he promised me he would maintain low contact and stand up to his parents, issuing an ultimatum that we would not allow any communication with my father and Janet. He agreed that we would not attend any gathering or party to which they were invited, and that we would not allow any attempts to force contact with my father. Larry met with his family to explain the situation, but when he returned from the discussion, he was agitated and appeared to have changed his mind. He tried to persuade me that his family only meant good and that he couldn't avoid touch with them because he loves them. He also stated that he couldn't control their friendships and tried to reassure me that it wouldn't be an issue in the future. He claimed his father would speak with my father and ensure he acted appropriately in my presence. As soon as I heard this, I started thinking about the remarks I'd read. The primary one is that if we had children, Larry might take them to his family, which includes my father and Janet, and I would have no control over it. At that point, I understood I couldn't trust Larry and would never be able to. I broke up with him. Larry isn't taking it well and constantly begging me to accept him back, swearing he won't contact his family. His family and friends are pleading with me not to stop the relationship, but he has made his decision and demonstrated to me that he lacks courage. I do not need him in my life. In reference to my father, I am considering obtaining a restraining order. Given what transpired at the restaurant, I may be able to, but I'm not sure yet. My acquaintance is assisting me in investigating the matter. My father has kept a low profile since last week, with the exception of a few attempts to apologize, and I haven't heard anything from him. My sister still refuses to speak with my father or Janet. Unlike me, my sister is very confrontational and has attacked them on social media about what happened at the restaurant and other earlier events that I was unaware of. When my sister and Janet ran into each other in town, they had a very public yelling match, with Janet demanding that my sister remove her posts. It concluded with Janet assaulting my sister. My father reportedly sided with Janet in this, and now my sister despises Janet and refuses to speak with our father, who is also attempting to reach her. My father's and Janet's reputation appears to have suffered as a result of the restaurant event, my sister's battle with Janet, and several Facebook posts about them. Individuals are gossiping, which has worked well for me since some individuals have backed down, which I am pleased about. Unfortunately, a few people continue to support him, including my ex's parents. There hasn't been much news about my half-siblings recently. I've located a therapist, but there's a bit of a waiting list before I can begin therapy. I'm still living with my mother, who is completely supportive, and I've found a cat that I'll pick up next week. Update 5. I'm still at my mother's house and I've got my tiny kitten. I named her Sasha, and she is the loveliest thing, yet quite lively. I'll try to take pictures for people who request them, but she won't stay still long enough for a decent shot. I already love her, and my mother continues to be my rock. I'm still waiting for treatment, but I'm finding Reddit beneficial and therapeutic, and the majority of the people here have been quite kind and helped me see things more clearly. So many thanks to everyone. As for my ex, now that we've split up, I feel lighter and more free. Being away from him has made me realize all of the red lights in our relationship that I was previously unaware of, and I feel like I escaped unharmed. Luke, who is using real names because my blogs were discovered, is not dealing well with the separation and has taken over my father's role in continually disturbing me. If you read this, Luke, we're done, and I won't change my mind. So stop phoning me, coming to my house, or sending me flowers. I'm moving on, and you should too. My sister, Emma, is still on my side and has moved on from Janet, the stepmonster. My sister informed everyone about Janet's affairs and they are no longer communicating. Janet is still trying to preserve face, claiming my sister is lying and telling everyone that we are the worst and have treated her terribly throughout the years, attempting to ruin her marriage. I don't think anyone believes what she is saying. Janet has sent hateful mails to both myself and my sister. When we ran into her, she yelled at us and threatened us. My sister's car has been keyed and my store windows have been broken. Unfortunately, we can't prove anything, but she's the most likely suspect. My half-siblings are undoubtedly my father's children. They were tested years ago when she was a baby. According to what I've heard, they're not speaking with Janet at all. My father seemed to have grown a spine and kicked Janet out. She is currently living with her parents, according to what I've heard, and he is considering divorce. I haven't spoken with my father since he apologized for everything in a text message. Regarding a restraining order, I'm more concerned with obtaining one against Janet at this time. I have cameras, but you can't tell if it's her due to the angle. I'm getting fitted for better covering. The damage is already done. My father had a chance to make things right with me, but he squandered it. I just want to be alone and get on with my life. Update 6. My father and Janet are still together. They split up for a period but are now back together and maintaining a united face, despite the fact that she is a cheater. Apparently, they tried again for the sake of their children. Strangely enough, my father and I are in a better place. We text periodically and are friendly when we see each other. He has ceased pushing for a relationship and is now respecting my space. We can now be in the same room without generating a commotion, and we've even had the occasional coffee together, which to be honest, is all I ever wanted. He even provided me with my education fund without any restrictions attached. My step-siblings and I have begun to communicate and follow each other on social media. My stepsister occasionally comes to my workplace to assist. I knew they were not to blame, and I was being unjust to them. They are still furious with their mother, but they have to live with her. They're giving her the quiet treatment, as far as I can tell. I still despise Janet, but at least she isn't bothering me. Unfortunately, I was unable to obtain a restraining order against her owing to a lack of proof. I avoid and do not speak to her, and I believe my father has warned her. My sister is conversing with our father again, but she despises Janet and would not have anything to do with her. She goes out of her way to exclude Janet from everything she can, and my sister and I have become closer. As for Larry, we are not and will never be back together. He hasn't entirely accepted it, but things have settled down and I'm no longer hounded as much. He still wants to get back together, but I am not interested. His friends and family will come to accept this. He believes that because things are better between my father and me, I would soften and forgive him, but I can't trust him. As for me, I've started treatment and am working through my issues. I've recognized that my relationship with my father was not entirely his fault, and I share some of the guilt. I spent my life behaving as if he had abandoned me while in reality I had pushed him away. My business is doing great, so I'm just focused on myself right now. Husband wet the bed, threw a tantrum and is now refusing to speak to me after I told our daughter the truth. I'm feeling confused and isolated. This morning, I, 28F, woke up because the sheets I was sleeping on were damp. I believed our 6-year-old daughter had been in an accident, but to my amazement, it was not her. My husband had wet the bed. After showering, I woke him up and informed him what had happened. He initially denied it, but eventually acknowledged he had peed the bed. He sprang out of bed, horrified, and began ripping off the blankets. Because our kid was still asleep on the opposite side, he couldn't get them off, which I found amusing. He became angry and told me it wasn't amusing, so I stopped. The only thing his yanking off the sheets did was wake up our daughter, who was perplexed and inquired what was going on. He didn't say anything and kept fumbling with the sheets. When he didn't respond, I informed her that he had wet the bed. He froze and gave me an odd expression, like if he was about to cry or something. Our daughter inquired why he had soiled the bed, and because he was still silent, I calmly explained that accidents do happen. He just stood there, staring at me with a lethal expression. I am not exaggerating when I say he looked at me with utter hatred. I've never been terrified of him, but for a moment, I thought he was going to hit me. Then he dropped the bedding on the floor, exited the room and locked himself in the bathroom for nearly 45 minutes. When he came out, he quickly changed and went, saying, "You can take her to school." He did not even look at me. I was annoyed by his behavior, but I let it go since I didn't want to dispute with him when he was in such a foul attitude. However, when I returned home from work, he was still brooding and ignored me. I was still annoyed by his conduct, so I told him to get over it. That wetting the bed wasn't the end of the world, and stop taking it out on me. At this point, he accused me of humiliating him in front of our daughter. I thought that claim completely ludicrous on so many levels, so I furiously reminded him that he disgraced himself by wetting the bed, not I. He did not take it well, shouted at me and walked off to his computer. Now he won't talk to me, and I'm bewildered. I believe he was the one who acted inappropriately and immaturely, and I do not believe I did anything wrong. Maybe my last comment was harsh, but I believe he deserved it. Still, I'm wondering if I was too mean. Edit 1. I simply wanted to clarify that I did not advise our daughter to be mean or disgrace my husband. I informed her since I didn't know what else to say and it was very evident what had occurred. I felt it was best to be honest. I didn't say it in a humiliating way, but rather casually and without making a huge issue about it. I didn't expect my hubby to feel this horrible about it. Edit 2. For whatever reason, someone shared a link to a claim about my husband having cancer, which is false. Neither my husband nor I have cancer. Update 1. I reviewed my original post and realized that I needed to elaborate before providing an update. I felt empathy and cared for my hubby. I spoke gently to him after waking him up. However, his reaction caught me off guard and it couldn't have taken more than a minute for him to hop out of bed and lock himself in the bathroom. After that, I thought it was best to leave him alone. I realize I was wrong for informing our child, but I didn't do it to be mean or embarrass him. It was a stupid and terrible decision, and I regret it. Furthermore, it is difficult to show someone you care while they are being neglected. I contacted him after he left to see if he was okay, but he left it as read. I inquired again when I came home, but there was still no response. I asked if we could discuss it. Again, no reaction. I asked if he could explain why he was so angry with me, but he didn't say anything. I gave up and went to prepare dinner. After supper, I implored him to quit ignoring me. No response. When I inquired if he wanted me to leave, he said, "You can stay, I don't care." So I asked him again whether he'd stop ignoring me if I stayed, and when he answered no, I was done. While I don't think it's fair to ignore someone like that, I know I handled it horribly, and I feel terrible for being so nasty to him. Anyway, I texted him early this morning to apologize and to see if he was available to talk after work. Around midday he texted me okay. We met at home, and he was obviously cool and spoke little. I apologized for everything, for laughing, for informing our child, for asking him to get over it, and for the most shameful part, telling him he disgraced himself. He remained silent the entire time, and after I finished, he just questioned why I had told our child. I explained and then we sat in silence for what seemed like eternity. Then unexpectedly, he said, "I scared you, right?" I told him that short and he did. He claimed he could feel it. I inquired what caused him to react so aggressively, But he didn't know. He simply said he panicked when he realized he had soiled the bed, and it grew worse when I told our child. He stated he was furious with me for it. I apologize again for making him feel this way, and he apologized for scaring me. I'm not going to go over everything we said after that. It was a long conversation. To summarize, neither of us is pleased with how we behaved, and we both apologized for it. He wasn't as outraged as I had assumed about my laughter, but we agreed I shouldn't have informed our child. However, he is no longer upset about it and does not consider it to be a significant concern anymore. We both agreed that he shouldn't have neglected me in that manner, and I handled it horribly and harshly. We have accepted each other's apologies, but I still feel guilty about being so rude to him. Update 2. To begin with, because there were questions regarding why my husband peed the bed while sober, I attempted to persuade him to see a doctor after so many of you suggested it. But he flatly refused, stating it was meaningless because they would do nothing regardless. He's wet the bed once before, and both times he was weary and stressed out. So that could have been the cause. I'm not sure. This is becoming long, so if you simply want to read about my spouse divorcing me, you can stop right now. My second post was composed shortly after I had apologized. Based on the initial replies to my first post, I assumed that I must be a bad person and felt sorry for him. But to be honest, I never thought my original actions were particularly awful, and I still don't. That is not to say that I did not deserve some of the hate I received. I certainly did, but some of it was simply filthy, and some of the things I was reviled for never occurred, save in the minds of commenters. I felt terrible since the effect of my actions was so dreadful, despite the fact that I had no intention of hurting him. So the apology was genuine, and by the time of the second post, I was relieved we were on speaking terms and hoped we could put this behind us. It turned out that I couldn't. Shortly after, I realized I was still concerned by his actions. I also began to receive more remarks from people who noticed problems with his behavior, which I appreciate because it confirmed to me that it was most likely serious. What I purposefully left out of my first post in order to get unbiased feedback was the fact that my hubby can be unstable at times. He can be immature and sensitive, struggles to regulate his emotions, particularly rage, and is sometimes difficult to understand. It's probably due to mental health concerns, which isn't fair to him, and I feel terrible about it. But sometimes I just find him annoying and exhausting. I guess I was called out for it in my first post. He'd been in contact with a mental health team for years, but if they hadn't prescribed his prescriptions, he would have stopped seeing them long ago. Anyway, I was getting weary of constantly catering to his mood swings and failing to confront his concerns. So his exaggerated and, in my mind, threatening reaction to our child peeing the bed and me notifying him felt like too much, even though I knew he was hurt. As I mentioned, I had never been intimidated by him before, so it bothered me, even though he did nothing. I tried to talk to him about what happened again, particularly why he became so angry that I felt intimidated. I even questioned him whether it had anything to do with him peeing the bed as a child, based on some suggestions in the comments about him being shamed for it. He simply stated that it did not, and it was evident that he did not want to discuss any of it, so I did not press. He's tough to talk to about feelings or relationship concerns, which may be really irritating for me. To be honest, I had some reservations about staying in this marriage, but they were not severe at the moment. Then around a week before Christmas, he made an unexpected suicide attempt, which was unfortunately not his first. I didn't see it coming and I still feel terrible about it, probably always will. His recall of the preceding hours is hazy, but he insists that he did not mean to harm himself when he left our house that night. But I should have known. It was bad, and we didn't know if he'd make it or in what condition. Fortunately, he lived, but with no long-term consequences. The aftermath was terrible, and when he returned home, he was really ill, lethargic for weeks. The quick answer to why he did it is that he obviously had an excessive amount of anxiety that he wanted to escape, along with his occasional complete lack of impulse control. He made it obvious that it had nothing to do with anything I had done. I had no idea how horrible he was feeling because he did not inform me or anyone else. It's very difficult to help him when he won't tell us how he feels. It terrified me, and it scared him as well, to the point where he knew he needed more support. He's taken it more seriously than he ever has before. When he was offered therapy, he accepted. Now that the wait time is ludicrous, he will begin in October. In the interim, he has been visiting a nurse and a psychiatrist. By April, he was back to normal and he returned to work in early May. Then we discovered I was pregnant. It was unintentional and the result of a birth control error on our part. Despite all of the obvious reasons why we should have terminated the pregnancy, we chose to continue with it. We didn't take this decision lightly, but it was what we wanted. I should mention that he was a complete mess throughout my first pregnancy, and the second, we have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, was equally difficult for him. But for some reason that escapes me now, we expected things to be different this time around. And it was for a time. At 12 weeks, we discovered that there were actually 2 babies. I know it's bad, but I'd be lying if I said we were delighted about it at first. However, by that time, we had already decided to have a baby, so we both agreed to proceed with it. After digesting the news, we became quite enthused about it. I'm 23 weeks pregnant and things had been going well until yesterday. When he arrived home from work, he was unhappy. I assumed he had a hard day at work, but when I questioned about it, he responded with an angry diatribe about how dumb we were for having the babies and how we should have terminated them. I was stunned, and when I asked why he was saying that and pointed out that it wasn't a good thing to say, he just said, "Well, you asked, and it's what I feel." I didn't want to talk to him while he was like that, so I told him we'd talk later, when the kids were asleep. When they were done, I asked him what it was all about and where it came from. He said he didn't know, like he does when he doesn't want to discuss something. I tried to push a little but went nowhere. I was frustrated and told him it wasn't fair to say such things and then refused to discuss them. He remained silent for a long time before saying, "Expletive this," and locking himself in the restroom. When he came out, he appeared depressed. I inquired whether he was all right, and he indicated he needed some air. I assured him it was all right to feel sad. However, he objected and vehemently stated that he was not sad. I know I should have let him go, but I had a horrible feeling. I requested him to remain, but he didn't like it and screamed that he didn't want to expletive stay, before slamming the door so violently that the kids woke up. After he departed, all I could do was tend to the children, pretend everything was well and hope he returned safely. I was very worried. When the kids fell back asleep, I contacted him to see if he was okay, and then I cried. He responded almost immediately with, "I'm okay. I'll be home at 5, sorry. I love you." Which relieved some of my anxiety, but I remained unhappy and angry. He returned shortly afterwards, definitely high but calmer. He is not addicted but he does use it occasionally. When he noticed I was crying, he apologized. I told him I wasn't good with him treating me that way, and we had the same talk we'd had before. Him apologizing and me explaining how hurt I was. At that point, I realized I wasn't even angry anymore, though I probably should have been. I simply asked him not to run away like that again. He said he wouldn't, but deep down I know he will. We went to bed after that, but I was unable to sleep. To be honest, I haven't felt fantastic today. I'm terrified, disappointed and feel extremely dumb. When my husband arrived home today, he was in a better mood. He was such a sweetheart. He even spoke to me. He apologized for yesterday and expressed disappointment in himself for his actions. He stated he's been working so hard to act like a normal person, his words, and is weary of failing all the time. I know he's trying and doesn't always fail, so I advised him not to be too hard on himself. I asked how he was feeling, and he replied that he wasn't feeling well, but he couldn't clarify. When I inquired how horrible not well was, he stated it wasn't too bad and I shouldn't worry. He promised to let me know if things grew worse, but I'm not sure I can trust him. I'm terrified he'll crash again, and I'm not sure I have the energy for it right now. I am quite sure he doesn't either. I really hope that treatment will benefit him, but I'm not sure what we can realistically anticipate from it. What if it doesn't make any difference? What should we do then? I know my posts have primarily focused on the negative, so it may not appear that way, but I adore my hubby. I don't want to live without him, but I also don't want to live this way. I'm not sure, maybe I'm just excessively sensitive right now, being pregnant and all. Boss reprimanded me for not answering an email in 4 minutes. Now I'm wondering if I should quit due to her unreasonable demands. I've been at my new job for just over a month and have very grave doubts about whether it's going to work out. I'm finding it impossible to make my supervisor, Martha, happy. Her criticism is frequent, harsh and in my opinion, often very unreasonable. The incident that has me writing to you happened today, when she reprimanded me in writing for failing to answer an email in 4 minutes. To set the scene. Earlier this week, Martha and my other boss, I support 2 teams but it's an uneven split. Unfortunately my primary boss is the awful one, had a meeting with me in which Martha told me all the things I was doing wrong and what needed to change. I'm trying to understand where she's coming from, but I'm just not used to a work situation like this. She proudly describes herself as a micromanager. She doesn't appear to know the word has a negative connotation. And is looking for constant, immediate responsiveness, over-communication, her words, and accountability. I understand she's the boss and it's her call, but it's a hard adjustment. I'm not used to being watched so closely. Every job I've had, the boss has been concerned with results, not with knowing exactly where I am every minute, hearing back from me instantly, etc. All week, I've worked so hard to keep her happy and show her that I took the conversation to heart. Then today, I received an email, in which Martha was CC'd, from a senior partner asking for contact info for one of our clients. I saw the email come in while I was working on a project for the other boss. I made the apparently grave error of not stopping instantly, but instead finished up the line in the Excel sheet I was working on, then opened the email and began gathering the requested info. Before I had finished, Martha replied to both of us, sending the partner the requested information, the wrong information for the record, but I'll get to that later. I saw her email, which arrived in my inbox a whopping 4 minutes after the email from the partner, stopped working on my response since it was no longer necessary, and went back to the project I'd been working on. Then I get an email from Martha. Jane, this would have been a great opportunity to build a relationship with the partner. Why didn't you dive in and assist? 4 minutes, Allison. 4 minutes. A bathroom break can take 4 minutes. I just feel like she's determined to hate me. I tried so hard all week to do everything exactly the way she likes, and she still found something to criticize. If she wanted me to answer the email, why didn't she give me a grace period of, maybe 5 minutes before answering it herself? Also, as I said earlier, she gave him the wrong information. He asked for the email address and she gave the physical address, which to me seems like she was so eager to answer the email, so that she could blame me for not answering it, that she rushed and sent the wrong info. By the way, if I sent incorrect information to a partner, she would act like it was the end of the world. But it's no big deal when she does it. Also, for the record, I understand some things are very time sensitive. I still think 4 minutes is kind of a stretch, for almost any situation, but I also want to make it clear. This was not an urgent request. It could have waited 5, maybe even, 10 minutes. I'm not asking whether my boss is being reasonable here. I'm very confident that she isn't. My question to you is, do you think I should start looking for a new job? I just feel like this is such an unreasonable criticism that there's no way I'm ever going to make this person happy. She either has no idea how to manage people or has developed an instantaneous hatred for me and will continue to find things to criticize no matter how hard I try. I've been so stressed out since I started this job, worrying about messing up, which not surprisingly, is probably leading me to mess up more. Is this salvageable or should I start looking for an escape plan? Update. Your response was really helpful. Martha had already fucked with my head so much that she really had me doubting myself. So much so that I honestly thought you might take her side and ask me, but why did it take you 4 whole minutes to answer the email? So for you and the commenters to reassure me that yes, she was being unreasonable was really helpful. As for an update. Reader, she fired me. Yes, I took your advice and started looking for a new job. She fired me before I could find one. The 4-minute email happened about a month after I started and I got fired just under the 3-month mark. The reason given was that I was making too many mistakes and that they couldn't trust me with my assignments. I'm curious how it's going with my replacement, if things like accidentally saving a draft to the wrong folder, in your first month at a new job, qualify as fireable offenses. I mess up sometimes, more than I normally do. But I think it's because of how Martha treated me. She was so volatile that I didn't feel comfortable asking questions, and she also would just disappear fairly often. She can disappear for 3 hours. I'm in trouble for missing a phone call because I was using the restroom. So a lot of times I had to make my best guess, and yes, amazingly, my best guess was always wrong. She was always coming after me with artificially compressed deadlines, so I usually had to send her work without having the amount of time I'd prefer to proofread, double-check, etc. Sometimes I thought she was moving the goalposts. Often she would say, "I told you to do X not Y," and I'd think, though I'd never say it out loud lest I face her wrath. "I don't think you did actually." And sometimes it was 100% clear that she was just inventing reasons to berate me. See, for example, 4-minute email. When I got the email that I wrote to you about, I knew deep down that she was just never going to let up. Clearly, she would find something to criticize whether I did something wrong or not, and in the end probably fire me, or bully me until I quit. That played out many times in the weeks before my firing. If I made a minor mistake, she lost her mind. If I didn't make a mistake, she would invent one. For example, she would email me to say things like, "The meeting has been over for 30 minutes. By this point you should have emailed me to ask what our next steps are." Maybe, but see above hesitancy to initiate contact with a volatile boss who finds fault with everything I say or do. I absolutely couldn't win, and it was just a horrible, stressful, demoralizing experience. The good news is that I did find another job that I'm much happier with, though the first few weeks were very tough as I tried to put the experience with Martha behind me. I was afraid to ask questions, thought I was about to be fired every time I made a mistake, etc. But as time went by and it became clear to me that I was now working with reasonable people, it got much better. While I didn't get out in time, I'm grateful for you and the commenters because, as I said, it helped me to keep some perspective in the face of a person doing her best to destroy my faith in my basic competency. I really wish this hadn't happened to me, and while I'm happy in my new job, and it's a bump in both title and salary, I actually now have Martha's job title. Seriously, suck it, Martha. I would never say it happened for a reason. Or that I'm grateful for it in any way. The fact that someone could bully me like this, be 100% in the wrong, fire me, and get away with all of it is really hard to accept. But all I can do is look forward. My husband finally cut ties with his toxic mom and sister after they demanded we give up our house for my jobless sister-in-law and her family. My in-laws have a very toxic connection with my spouse, and it is beginning to ruin my life. Growing up, my husband was my favorite, the golden child, and my mother-in-law was very close to him. Jacob has informed me that because his father was so busy at work, he and his mother spent a lot of time together. However, I've noticed that his sister, Sarah, is not treated equally by my mother-in-law. Although I am confident that my mother-in-law loves both of her children, I have repeatedly observed that she prioritizes my husband. I'm sure Sarah felt the same way growing up, which is why my husband has always attempted to fill the void by being a kind elder brother to her and always being there for her. But the truth is that Sarah and my mother-in-law would sometimes behave in such a ridiculous manner that it crossed the line. For example, when we initially started dating, Jacob, a recent college graduate, and my in-laws, including Sarah, shared a house. My in-laws had offered my husband a totally own level so that he could have his own privacy and welcome whomever he pleased. This is why he would occasionally invite me to his home to spend the night with him. However, several times in the morning, Sarah would storm into our room while we were asleep without knocking. As you may guess, we were not always properly dressed, but she would act as if everything was normal and begin talking to Jacob about utterly random topics. This was very strange for me because I was uncomfortable with her seeing me in my lingerie. Before anyone points out, I absolutely understand that Jacob was living with his family at the time, so I should have expected this, but is knocking on the door before entering really that much to ask? I suppose siblings can be quite close, but she and I didn't know each other very well when Jacob and I first started dating, so I thought it was really rude. Naturally, I spoke with Jacob about it and informed him that I would not be going over unless he installed a lock on his door. He agreed. But as you can guess, Sarah, who attempted to storm into the room the next morning but was unsuccessful, began ranting at us about why the door was locked. She began jiggling and hammering on the door, begging her brother to let her in. Jacob eventually let her in, and she stormed into the room, asking why he had set the lock in the first place. When she recognized me, she pointed to me and began ranting at him, asking if it was because of this skank. I was astonished by how harsh and insulting she sounded. Jacob told Sarah that he wanted to install the door lock, but Sarah was not convinced. She angrily informed him that they were siblings and should not keep any secrets between them. Jacob told her that he had no secrets, and that he had put the lock so she wouldn't barge in when we were asleep, which was quite disturbing. Sarah violently flipped her head towards me and exclaimed that it was all my fault, saying that I was interfering with her and her brother. This was too much for me, as I am generally non-confrontational, so I excused myself to visit the restroom. I could hear her yelling, with Jacob attempting to calm her. When she eventually left, Jacob came in to comfort me. He apologized for her actions and informed me that he would speak with her again so she could apologize to me as well. When I arrived the following weekend, Sarah apologized and offered me a pitiful excuse, claiming that she needed to speak with Jacob urgently and so believed it would be good for me to come in. Jacob forcefully asked her not to bother us again, and she agreed sheepishly. Although this issue appeared to be remedied, it was not the only strange conduct she demonstrated towards Jacob. If Jacob and I differed on something, even something as trivial as movies, and Sarah was around, she would begin telling him that he should date someone with comparable likes, meaning that we were unsuitable for each other. Jacob would give her a condemning look, but she would simply smirk. Another episode was Sarah asking me awkward questions about my background in an attempt to delve into my life. Jacob and I had been open about our past since the beginning, but I didn't feel comfortable addressing it with his sister. Regardless of my thoughts, she would ask me questions like, "Why did your ex break up with you? Were you not suitable for him?" Can make remarks like, "My brother's previous girlfriend was far more attractive than you." All of these queries and comments arose when she and I were alone. I began to suspect that she was trying to play a game with me, bringing me down. I initially kept my lips shut, but as the situation progressed, I had enough. One day, I responded to her taunting by stating, I liked my ex-boyfriend's family better than Jacob's because he didn't have nosy, overbearing family members. Sarah was taken aback by my reply, which temporarily silenced her. Even though Sarah had a strange relationship with my husband, my mother-in-law was no exception. When I first entered Jacob's life, my mother-in-law ignored me, but once she discovered we were serious, she began acting as if I was attempting to steal her son away. She would purposefully ignore me at dinners and family gatherings, as if I did not exist. Jacob saw this occasionally and tried to talk to her, but she never changed. My mother-in-law once referred to me as stuck-up and spoiled, just because my parents put me to a private school while she was a public school teacher. I also know she tried to talk Jacob out of marrying me, telling him he should look for a better spouse. Fortunately, my spouse did not care about her view and proposed to me nonetheless. My mother-in-law and Sarah were shocked to learn that Jacob had proposed. Both contacted me, telling me that it was a horrible decision and that, because Jacob wouldn't listen to them, I should quit the relationship and return the ring. I found this quite strange and declined, stating that they were crossing a line by asking me to do something like that when I loved Jacob and wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. When they realized they couldn't persuade me, my mother-in-law reluctantly changed her mind, telling me that I should strive to be the best wife for him and care for him in the same manner she did for years. I was rather offended, but I tried not to take her remarks too seriously. Sarah, on the other hand, accused me of being a gold digger and claimed her brother deserved someone with higher status. She even threatened to expose me before our wedding so Jacob would not marry me. Following this conversation, I immediately spoke with Jacob about everything. He was taken aback by how disrespectful they were towards me. He challenged them, but my mother-in-law and Sarah continued to believe that I was unsuitable for him. Jacob told me to disregard them, assuring me that he loved me regardless of their opinions. Despite his reassuring remarks, I felt horrible that his own family would not embrace me. Jacob and I had already chosen to pay for our wedding ourselves, so when my mother-in-law offered to cover half of the cost, we politely declined. Despite Jacob's reassuring remarks, I felt horrible that his own family would not embrace me. Jacob and I had already planned to pay for our own wedding, so when my mother-in-law offered to cover half of the costs, we politely declined, with Jacob explaining how hard we had worked to save money specifically for this occasion. Instead of being happy for us, she became even more angry, and she began telling Jacob how sad she was that he no longer needed her. However, Jacob's father appeared to be quite pleased with us. Unlike his sister and mother, his father was very calm and never had any issues with our connection. Since my mother-in-law continued to complain to Jacob, we made a compromise by telling her that we would love for her to organize the rehearsal dinner for us. She agreed, and we appreciated her generosity. However, when the wedding approached, events took an unexpected turn. The first instance came when Sarah invited herself to join us for supper, telling Jacob how much she missed him. Jacob and I were living on our own following our engagement, so we assumed she genuinely wanted to spend time with her brother. We agreed, and Jacob asked me directly if I was comfortable with having supper with her. I reluctantly consented, not wanting to be nasty to my soon-to-be sister-in-law. While we were enjoying our dinner, Sarah abruptly began discussing how much she despised cheating partners, claiming that cheaters were nothing but useless pieces of trash. We stared at her, curious about where she was headed with this. Then, out of nowhere, she looked me directly in the eyes and asked how it felt to be a useless piece of trash. My brow furrowed in perplexity as Sarah began to rant, accusing me of having an affair with my co-worker Zach. Jacob, also perplexed, asked her what she meant by saying. Sarah proudly hauled out photos of me and one of my co-workers, waving them around and claiming that she had caught me red-handed. I knew I'd never been unfaithful to Jacob, so I was curious as to why she assumed I was having an affair. Looking through the photos, they appeared to be entirely innocent. It's true that Zach and I were close coworkers, but only because we started at the same time and helped each other out when we made mistakes, so our manager wouldn't criticize us. Zach even had a girlfriend, which Jacob knew about. I don't have a lock on my phone, and I've always been open with Jacob about all of my colleagues. Sarah had turned these pleasant moments caught in photographs into something they were not. Evidence of a fictitious affair. In truth, they were far from it. Her false charges irritated me since it was obvious she was attempting to damage my reputation and disrupt my connection with Jacob. Before I could defend myself, Jacob, stunned and plainly upset, moved in to help. He questioned Sarah why she was following me around and photographing me with my coworkers in public places without their permission. When Sarah heard this, she began rationalizing her behavior, claiming she simply wanted to investigate me because I was not of their status, and she was scared I was marrying Jacob to steal his money. Jacob told her unequivocally that her charges were false and that she was creating extra drama out of nothing. He tried to reason with her, telling her to stop spreading lies and attempting to destroy our relationship, but Sarah insisted that Jacob open his eyes to the obvious affair that was going on. I also tried to clarify that we were only co-workers, but Sarah insisted on her charges. As her charges grew more serious, the environment became strained. I had had enough and informed her that I was going to make a police report against her for illegally photographing and stalking me. Her look grew terrified as she inquired whether I was serious. I informed her I had all of the evidence. She had purposely tracked me and took these images without my permission, attempting to slander me with ludicrous lies. Sarah stared at Jacob and then back at me, arguing that she did everything to protect her brother and that it wasn't a big deal. She began imploring Jacob to speak with me, worried that if I filed a complaint it would jeopardize her profession and future. I strongly told her that she could only save herself at this time. Sarah inquired what I wanted. I assured her I wouldn't pursue the complaint if she kept away from my life. Sarah had no other option for escaping the situation at that point. She looked to her brother for support, but Jacob defended me, telling her that she should be grateful I was willing to let it go because what she had done was clearly wrong. Sarah reluctantly agreed to stay away from me, and we have not spoken since that day. Jacob still has a relationship with her, but she has never spoken to me again. The second incident occurred shortly before our wedding, at the rehearsal dinner. My mother-in-law, who had insisted on planning the meal, rebuffed our offer of assistance in any manner. She told us that she would take care of everything. However, when we arrived, it was evident that the preparations were far from what we had anticipated. The rehearsal dinner had plastic tablecloths on picnic tables and chilly Mexican food. My mother-in-law was upset throughout dinner, which marred the festive atmosphere. She drank excessively and began behaving inappropriately with the guests, repeatedly stating how she couldn't wait for the wedding to end and how stressful it had been, despite the fact that she had not contributed monetarily or assisted with the planning. Eventually, my father-in-law became irate and escorted her away. Sarah attempted to excuse her mother's actions, but my father-in-law refused to listen. As you might guess, the entire affair was a fiasco, and I began to worry that both my mother-in-law and Sarah would wreck the wedding the next day. That night, Jacob and I had our first disagreement. I informed him strongly that he needed to uninvite Sarah and his mother because, based on their actions, they would surely try to overshadow us at the wedding. My husband angrily protested, promising me that his father would be present and would not allow them to get away with it. Frustrated, I promised that if he didn't uninvite them, there would be no wedding the following day. Jacob was plainly taken aback by my demand, and even knowing how extreme I sounded, I was concerned about what they might do. I did not want to be embarrassed again in front of my family and friends on our wedding day. Jacob definitely lacked firm boundaries, but I hoped that this ultimatum would make him realize how much his family was interfering with our relationship. Thankfully, Jacob understood and made the proper decision. He called his father early in the morning to inform him that his mother and sister were uninvited. Phil didn't appear startled and promised Jacob that he'd make sure my mother-in-law and Sarah didn't show up there unexpectedly. Shortly after our chat with Phil, my mother-in-law and Sarah began contacting Jacob constantly, apparently trying to persuade him to let them attend the wedding. However, Jacob forcefully told them that he did not feel comfortable having them there because of how they had treated me throughout our relationship. Hearing this, my mother-in-law began accusing me of being a terrible influence and interfering with her relationship with her son. Sarah attempted to argue with him, but Jacob was certain in his decision. I felt horrible that Phil couldn't attend our wedding because of his wife and children. I even felt sorry about issuing the ultimatum. But all of my remorse vanished when I discovered from some of Jacob's cousins that Sarah and my mother-in-law had intended to wear white dresses to our wedding. The cousins informed me that in their family WhatsApp group, which only had female members, Sarah had encouraged the others to wear white as well, stating there was no reason for the bride to be the only one. I was astounded by how low they would go just to hurt me. After knowing this, I was relieved they hadn't been invited. Jacob missed his family, but he could see where I was coming from. Overall, we had a lovely wedding, and no one tried to outdo us. Since that day, my mother-in-law and Sarah have stopped talking to me entirely, which I am absolutely okay with. They only invited Jacob around for dinner or special events, which didn't bother me at all. Phil, on the other hand, was always kind to me, and we stayed in touch over the years. Jacob and I painstakingly saved money and finally purchased a new home this year. It was our first home, and we were overjoyed to own something so meaningful. Jacob's parents and Sarah did come to visit for a modest housewarming celebration, but I went to see my parents and spent time with my family instead. Now, to the major point, my mother-in-law contacted me unexpectedly last month. This was really surprising because Mom and I hadn't spoken since the day I married Jacob. Surprisingly, she casually inquired about my well-being and life circumstances. I was taken aback by her unexpected interest, but I responded pleasantly. Then she questioned how it felt to live in such a spacious house with only Jacob and myself. Her remark stung since Jacob and I had been trying to conceive for a long time but were unable to do so owing to infertility concerns. Jacob and I had mourned the thought of never having children, but we gradually accepted it. When I first got the news, I informed Jacob that if he wanted to marry someone else and have children, he could divorce me. But Jacob had always stayed by me, assuring me that it was fine to be childless as long as we had each other. Our families were aware of this, so my mother-in-law's comment was very painful. She then told me Sarah was pregnant again. I was astonished because this would be her 6th child. Jacob had told me how her husband was unemployed and did not believe in using contraception, which resulted in these accidental pregnancies. Sarah's boyfriend was the embodiment of laziness, doing nothing around the house to aid her or the kids. I've heard from Jacob that he treats Sarah like a personal maid. He never pays any bills in the house. Sarah works many part-time jobs, while he spends the entire day gaming. Regardless of how much everyone has talked to her, Sarah never breaks up with him. My mother-in-law then went on to add that because Sarah could no longer afford to work during her pregnancy, she thought Jacob and I should give up our apartment because it was too big for a childless couple like us. I was caught aback by her demand and struggled to find words. I inquired whether she was joking, but my mother-in-law responded that she was serious, that Sarah and her husband deserved to live in a larger house. However, because she did not have enough space in her own home to accommodate them, she invited them to come in with us. The weight of her news weighed in the air as I fought to keep my composure in the midst of the emotional storm. I emphasized to her that this was our house, which we were still paying for, and the idea of someone else moving in without our permission was intrusive and ludicrous. However, my mother-in-law said that she had already spoken with Jacob, who had allegedly consented to this. This was strange because Jacob and I were always open with each other, and I knew he would have told me if he had agreed to let his sister and her family stay with us. I firmly told my mother-in-law that because the house belonged to both me and Jacob, he couldn't grant permission without my agreement. No one was allowed to reside here unless both of us agreed. To reach a solution, I told her that I would be pleased to accommodate Sarah and her husband for a few days if they wished, but that they could not stay permanently. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, began yelling, arguing that as a responsible daughter-in-law, I was required to make room for Sarah and her husband. She also assured me that if I complied with her demands, all previous troubles would be forgiven. In rage, I cynically said, "Sure, I'll be pleased to let them take our place. But you see, we're still paying for it, and I'm confident that if Sarah and her husband move in, they will not assist with the mortgage or bills. So how about you take some responsibility and contribute to their living expenses? I'd be grateful if you could just cover the mortgage, and we'll manage the rest. Of course, with only one job, you'll definitely need a second one to cover the home payments. Please let me know when you intend to get that second job." Hearing this, my mother-in-law exploded in wrath, shouting and voicing her dissatisfaction. She said it was crazy of me to want her to pay the mortgage, and I responded that it was equally ridiculous for her to expect us to care for Sarah's family and allow them to move in. This infuriated her even more, and she continued to yell, while I smiled with satisfaction. She eventually disconnected the call when she saw I wouldn't give in to her demands. Soon after, Sarah called and yelled at me for daring to ask her mother to pay our mortgage. She went on to add that she had always known I was a gold digger. I informed her that she was the gold digger, attempting to live with us without contributing. I added that if she wanted to know who the true gold digger was, she could look at her own partner, who did nothing to assist her. This appeared to silence her. I firmly told Sarah that she could argue with me all she wanted, but I would never let her family into our home unless they agreed to help with the mortgage. She accused me of being cruel and putting money before family. The tables had turned, and I was relieved at the thought of sticking up for myself and refusing to back down, taking control of my home. However, I feel a little awful thinking about my ex-husband, and I'm here on Reddit wondering if what I've done makes me the villain. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who has expressed their support. To answer the most crucial question that everyone keeps asking, why would my mother-in-law demand such a stupid thing of us? It's because she has always been so entitled. Clearly my husband has tolerated this charade for far too long, and he and I need to sit down and have a serious discussion about it. It's heartbreaking how my mother-in-law can lie about her own kid in order to get her way. My sister-in-law is a pawn in her game, doing whatever her mother-in-law wishes because my mother-in-law has always favored my husband. Sarah simply listens to what her mother says in the hopes of garnering favor as well. In this situation, Sarah stood to benefit because she could rely on us to pay her expenses and care for her children while her useless husband did nothing. I'm waiting for my spouse to return from his business trip so we can discuss. I do not want to discuss this over the phone since it is too important. Update 2. It's been 3 days since I last updated. As I indicated earlier, I was waiting for my husband to return. When he returned, we finally sat down and talked. I told him how his mother had called and demanded that we give up our house to his sister and her family. Jacob was definitely taken aback, so I gave him the whole story. He subsequently said that he had no idea about any of it. Prior to his journey, his mother had only told him that his sister was pregnant. That was all he knew about the situation, and he had no idea his mother would make such unreasonable demands. I informed him forcefully that I expected him to speak with his mother and deal with the matter because I couldn't bear his family anymore. He agreed. Jacob confronted his mother and questioned why she had lied to me about him. When caught red-handed, my mother-in-law attempted to backtrack, claiming that she had not actually lied. She said that she knew Jacob would have no objections to his sister staying with us, so she took matters into her own hands and approached me personally. Jacob stopped her off and questioned why she thought he would be fine with Sarah and her entire family coming in. My mother-in-law explained that because Jacob and Sarah were close, he would naturally want to support her by allowing her family to come in. Hearing this, I closed my eyes in disgust, but remained silent, allowing Jacob to handle his mother. Jacob then firmly told her that he was not going to let Sarah, her unemployed husband, and their 6 children move in with us. He also stated that she had no authority to compel us to take care of them. My mother-in-law started yelling, stating Sarah desperately needed aid at this time. But Jacob informed her it was not our job, and if she wanted to help, she could care for Sarah herself. My mother-in-law then said that Phil didn't want them in their small house, although we lived in a larger house and could easily help out. She even had the audacity to suggest that, since I was childless, assisting Sarah's children would make me feel fulfilled. My eyes widened with surprise, but for the first time, I noticed Jacob's face shift color. He raged at her, stating she had no right to say such rude things about me and couldn't use it to compel me to care for Sarah's children. Jacob went on to say that Phil didn't want anything to do with Sarah since she had turned into a child-birthing machine and that he was over both of them. My mother-in-law tried to backtrack again, but Jacob would not have it. He informed her that he had done his best to keep a positive connection with them, even after they had repeatedly disrespected me, but he couldn't take it any longer. My mother-in-law begged him, but Jacob assured her that this was our home and I was his wife. Anyone that offended me disrespected him as well, and they did not deserve to be in his life. Jacob ended the call with those final words. Since then, he has not spoken with Sarah or his mother. Phil summoned Jacob to speak, and after hearing the entire story, he understood why Jacob had made such a severe move. Phil apologized to me on behalf of his wife, but I informed him that it was not his responsibility. Update 3. It has been an interesting 2 weeks. A lot of people suggested that I install cameras around our house in case my mother-in-law and Sarah wanted to show up and cause a commotion. So I purchased several cameras online and installed them. As luck would have it, they showed up last weekend, banging on my door while I was alone at home. When I saw them through the camera, I quickly called Jacob, who told me he was on his way. I answered the door, and there they were, my mother-in-law and Sarah, both furious. They requested that I let them in, but I refused and told them that if they had anything to say, they could do so from the outside. My mother-in-law began ranting at me, accusing me of being callous, greedy and selfish. I politely informed her that this was our home, and they had no right to enter uninvited. She continued her tirade, unknowing that the cameras were recording every moment. I reminded her of our prior chat, emphasizing that I would not give up our house for Sarah and her family, and that if she had anything else to say, she could wait for Jacob's return. Sarah then began yelling, accusing me of breaking up the family for no reason, being a gold digger and attempting to take her brother away from them. I informed them that everything they said was being recorded and that I would use the footage to obtain a restraining order if necessary. Their eyes widened in surprise as my mother-in-law exclaimed that I wouldn't dare to do that. I smirked and informed her that if they did not leave the property immediately, they would receive a legal notice very soon. This worried them, and Sarah tried to convince me that I was overreacting, saying that it wasn't a big problem. Fortunately, Jacob came at that exact moment. He approached them casually, asking what they were doing. My mother-in-law raced to hug him, but he resisted and forcefully demanded why they had come. Sarah stated that I was attempting to control his life by separating him from them and that they had come to face me. Jacob reiterated that it was his decision to avoid touch, and he did not want anything to do with either of them. My mother-in-law begged for forgiveness, but Jacob merely told them to leave the property or he would call the cops. They were visibly taken aback, apparently not anticipating this reaction from him. Jacob went on to say that if they ever came up at our house again, we would contact the police and have them removed forcibly. They fled, devastated, but Jacob no longer cared. I was relieved that my spouse had finally spoken up for me. Jacob has now spoken with Phil, who was as surprised as we were that my mother-in-law and Sarah had gone behind his back to show up unexpectedly. Phil informed us that we were correct not to let them in and expressed disgust with their behavior. With Jacob being so stern about kicking them out, I doubt they'll dare to return to our property. If they do, I will contact a lawyer right away. I am relieved that my husband has finally learned how toxic his family is, and I hope this is my final update. I'm ready to move on from this circumstance and continue our lives peacefully.